Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today, we're heading somewhere especially dark and especially dangerous. The vast Texas highways. Endless stretches of blacktop cutting through ghost towns, forgotten woods, and shadows that move when they shouldn't. This isn't just another ghost story countdown. These are 20 true scary experiences on Texas roads at night, real encounters from drivers who saw things they can't explain, felt things they can't forget, and lived to tell the tale. Barely. But before we start the engine and disappear into the dark, here's something strange. Most people who watch videos like this make one big mistake. They don't subscribe. And that means they miss out on the creepiest, most chilling stories we uncover. The ones whispered in the back of gas stations, shared over crackling police radios, and passed down in towns that never show up on the map. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because today's just the beginning. And the horror waiting beyond the headlights is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments. Because here at Creepy Vibes, even in broad daylight, the road has its secrets, and some things only come out when you're not looking for them. Let's begin. It was late November, and the hill country air had taken on that crisp bite that smells like cedar smoke and old leaves. David wasn't supposed to be driving that stretch of Route 281 so late. His ex-wife, Miranda, had called after dinner to say their daughter Emily was running a high fever. They'd been divorced for just over a year, amicable enough but strained when it came to anything urgent. So when she asked him to bring Emily's favorite stuffed elephant from his place in Austin, he didn't hesitate. That elephant, gray, one-eyed, threadbare, was practically a security blanket. Miranda had tried to downplay the fever, but David knew her voice well enough to hear the panic behind the calm. He grabbed the elephant, threw on a jacket, and hit the road. Route 281 at night is one of those Texas roads that seem to stretch longer than it ought to, twisting through hills that rise like sleeping animals under the moonlight. Out there, between towns, the dark feels different. It's not just the absence of light. It's the kind of dark that swallows you up. The only things cutting through the black were David's high beams and the occasional flash of a speed limit sign. No traffic, no buildings, just the two-lane blacktop snaking through the brush. He passed through Marble Falls around 11:30, the last real blip of civilization before Blanco. After that, the road narrowed and the shoulders faded into rough gravel and mesquite thickets. He was about 15 miles north of Blanco when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a deer. There was movement on the edge of the road, a pale shape just outside the reach of his lights. He slowed instinctively. Hitting a deer at night on these roads was a good way to wind up dead. But as he got closer, he saw it wasn't an animal at all. It was a woman. She stood on the right shoulder, barefoot, wearing what looked like a long white dress. Not a modern one, either. This looked like something from another time. Vintage maybe, or something you'd see in an old photograph. Her hair was long and dark, hanging wet against her cheeks, and she held her arms crossed over her chest like she was freezing. David tapped the brakes. His heart pounded suddenly, maybe from surprise, maybe from some primal part of him that sensed something was off. But he slowed, rolling his window down as he pulled closer. "You okay?" He called out. And then she vanished. Not walked away, not ran, not ducked into the brush. Just gone. 1 second she was there, caught fully in his headlights. The next she WSN single quotes to. David stopped the car. For a full minute he sat in silence, staring at the spot where she'd been. He flicked his high beams back and forth. Nothing. The roadside was empty, the grass unmoved, the silence absolute. He checked the rear view, nothing behind him. He got out. He didn't know why. Maybe it was that same fatherly instinct that had sent him racing across 3 counties with a stuffed animal, but he left the engine running and walked to the side of the road, peering into the brush. "Ma'am?" he called. His voice sounded too loud in the still night. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" The only answer was wind moving through the cedar trees. He walked a few yards in, crunching gravel beneath his boots. The brush was thick, and beyond that, just hills and blackness. No sign of her. Not even a footprint in the dirt. He waited. Another minute, called again, then got back in the truck. He drove slow for the next 5 miles, half expecting her to reappear, maybe even running out of the woods. But she didn't. When he got to Blanco, he stopped for gas at the lone Shell station still open that late. He hadn't meant to tell anyone, but the attendant, a wiry older man in a ball cap and boots that had seen decades of hill country dust, asked if everything was all right. David hesitated, then told him about the woman. The man's face changed. The casual friendliness dropped away, replaced by something colder. Not fear exactly, but something adjacent. "You're not the first," he said. "She's been trying to get home since '72. David stared at him. "What do you mean?" The man took a slow sip from his styrofoam coffee cup. "Girl died on that stretch. Car crash. Hitched a ride to Austin, never made it. Some say she got dumped by her ride. Some say she jumped out herself. Either way, they found her in a ditch. Broken neck. Dress all torn up. She was trying to get to her sister's place outside. Blanco." He paused. "People see her sometimes. Same description every time, white dress, long hair, stands on the side of the road like she's waiting. Soon as you get close, gone." David didn't sleep that night, even after he dropped off the stuffed elephant and made sure Emily had cooled down. He stayed at Miranda's spare room, lying awake and staring at the ceiling. But that wasn't the end. 3 nights later, he drove the same road again, this time during the day. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. The spot wasn't hard to find. It had etched itself into his memory. Same bend in the road. Same stretch of trees. He parked the truck on the shoulder and walked a little ways into the brush. Nothing there. But then he saw it, a tattered piece of white fabric caught on a mesquite thorn. Old, brittle. He touched it and it crumbled in his fingers. That night, the dreams started. They were never clear, never linear. Just flashes. A face in the mirror that wasn't his. A girl screaming as headlights approached. A crash. Shards of glass floating in the air like snow. Over and over again. Then things started happening during the day. Doors opening. Radios turning on by themselves. The worst was one morning when he got into his truck and found the passenger seat soaked, damp, as if someone had been sitting there, fresh out of a river. It got worse each time he drove Route 281. Shadows in the rearview. Whispers in the static of the radio. A presence. Cold, heavy, watching. One night he decided to end it. He drove back to that spot, pulled over and left the truck running. "I don't know what you want," he said aloud, "but if you need a ride, I'll take you." The air shifted. He opened the passenger door. Waited. A full minute. Nothing. Then the seat sank. Not visibly, but he felt it. Like a weight had dropped beside him. He drove not far, just down the road, past Blanco, out to the old church cemetery where he'd heard her sister had been buried. He parked beside the gate. "I think this is home," he said, and just like that, the air lifted. The heaviness gone. The passenger seat dry. Since then, he hasn't seen her again. But he doesn't drive that road after dark anymore. And when people ask why, he tells them the truth. He gave the woman in white her last ride. And he prays she doesn't need another. The road out near Marfa stretched like a ribbon of black molasses through the desert, straight and unbroken for miles, hemmed in by scrub brush and shadowed mesas. The air was dry, humming with the low pulse of heat even after midnight. Diesel. Fumes drifted behind Ron Talbot's 18-wheeler as it cut across the silence. He'd driven these Texas roads for nearly 30 years, but there was always something about the emptiness near Marfa that unsettled him, like the land didn't want to be crossed, like it held something in its bones it didn't want stirred. It was just after 1 a.m. when he saw him. The soldier stood at the side of the highway, half in shadow, one hand raised in that universal hitchhiker's gesture. Young guy, maybe mid-20s, lean build, regulation haircut, desert camouflage. Fatigues. He wasn't waving, just standing there like he knew someone would stop. Ron eased the rig to a rumbling halt on the shoulder, dust kicking up around the headlights. The soldier didn't hesitate. He walked up and climbed into the cab like it was a scheduled pickup. "Evening, sir," he said, voice steady but soft. "Appreciate the lift." Ron glanced over. The kid's uniform was clean but sun-faded, the edges of the name patch fraying. It read, J. Mercer. No backpack, no gear, no visible sweat, even though it was still in the upper 80s. Ron nodded. "Where?" "You headed, soldier?" "Marfa," the young man said. "Just Marfa." Ron shifted back into gear, pulling onto the road. The soldier settled in silently. For a few miles, neither of them spoke, just the hum of tires on blacktop and the occasional screech of a cicada, breaking the quiet. Then Ron, always one to make small talk, glanced over again. "You stationed out here?" "Was," the soldier replied, not looking at him. His voice was distant, like he was speaking down a long tunnel. "Training exercises. Desert navigation, long nights." Ron chuckled, trying to keep it light. "I bet. This stretch of road could break a man's mind. Nothing but scrub and stars." The soldier looked out the window. "That's true," he said. "Things out here. They don't sleep like people do. They wait." Ron didn't know how to answer that, so he just kept driving. The soldier eventually spoke again, quieter this time. "You ever seen the lights?" "The Marfa lights?" Ron shrugged. "I've seen 'em a few times. Hell if I know what they are. Some say headlights, some say ghosts. What do you think?" There was a long pause before the soldier answered. "I think some things don't want to be explained. They just are." That gave Ron a small shiver, but he chalked it up to the hour. He reached for his thermos and took a swig of lukewarm coffee. "You from around here?" "No," the soldier said, "but I died here." Ron choked on his coffee, nearly dropping the thermos. "What?" He turned his head sharply, but the seat next to him was empty. The cab was dark except for the dashboard glow. The passenger door was shut tight. There was no sign anyone had been there. Ron pulled over, heart hammering. He checked the door, the floor, even behind the seat. Nothing. Just the hum of the engine and the whir of desert wind through the cracked window. He sat there for a long minute, trying to convince himself he'd nodded off, hallucinated. Maybe the long hours were finally getting to him. He didn't see another vehicle until he pulled into Marfa. Sometime around 2:30 a.m., the town was mostly asleep, save for a single bar on the edge of Main Street with a crooked neon sign flickering. Open. He needed to talk to someone, anyone, even if just to clear his head. The bar was dim, with walls yellowed from years of smoke and whiskey spills. A few regulars hunched over their beers, but no one looked up when he walked in. Ron sat at the counter and the bartender, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes and a mop of silver hair, gave him a nod. "Rough night? You could say that." Ron rubbed his face. "Look, I don't want to sound crazy, but I picked up a hitchhiker out on 90, young guy, soldier. Said his name was Mercer. Then he just disappeared. Vanished right there in my cab. The bartender didn't blink. She poured a shot of something dark and slid it over to him. "You saw Jesse," she said simply. "He died out there 20 years ago." Ron blinked. "What?" She nodded. "Jesse Mercer, Private, Army Reserve. Training out near the old missile range. They used to send green recruits out there to simulate isolation. He got separated from his unit during a sandstorm. They found his body a week later. Dehydrated. Heat stroke. Only 23. Poor boy wasn't ready for that kind of terrain. Nobody ever is." The bar had gone quiet. Even the jukebox had stopped humming. "He's been seen off and on ever since," the bartender continued, wiping down a glass. "Always on hot, moonless nights. Always asking for a ride to Marfa." Ron felt a chill in his spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Why here?" he asked. "Why Marfa?" The bartender looked at him, eyes sharp and sad. "Because this is where he was trying to go. Last place he was headed before he got lost. Some folks think he's stuck, still trying to finish the trip. Others say it ain't really him that. Something's wearing his skin, trying to find someone to follow it back." Ron didn't touch the shot. He left a 20 on the counter and walked back out into the warm night. He looked toward the highway where the blacktop shimmered under the street lamps. It felt different now, thinner, like a membrane stretched tight between worlds. He told himself he was done driving nights, that it was just fatigue, stress, a long-haul driver's brain running loops. But 3 nights later, halfway between Van Horn and Marfa, another trucker swerved to miss a figure standing in the road. Same fatigues, same stance, same name patch. When they came to investigate the skid marks and ask questions, Ron didn't answer. He just looked out at the horizon, at the desert that never ended, and felt the heat rising again, like the land was breathing, slow and deep, waiting for someone else to take the wrong turn. Say yes to the wrong hitchhiker. Because Jesse wasn't the only one out there. He was just the one who smiled first. We were parked off FM 1709, just west of Keller, where the road dips a little before climbing up toward the gas station that glows like a broken lantern in the dark. That part of the road isn't much, just a narrow stretch lined with dying oak and mesquite, the kind of place where deer leap out of nowhere and roadkill turns to leather on the gravel shoulder. It's quiet out there, always has been. That night, it was just me and Riley. We'd just seen a dumb horror flick at the Cinemark, something with too much CGI and not enough soul, and we weren't ready to go home yet. We weren't making out or anything. I was just talking to her about graduation, college, whether we were staying together or not. That kind of talk, the kind you only have when you're half hoping the other person will stop you and say, "Of course we're staying together." She didn't. The windows were halfway down. The radio low some indie song Riley liked. A breeze carried in the smell of fresh cut hay and something else, something metallic and sharp. You know that scent that hangs in the air after someone cuts themselves shaving? It was like that, faint but wrong in the context of a Texas summer. Night out we heard it then, faint but clear, crying. At first, I thought it was a cat or some kind of animal in the woods to our right. The trees huddled there like spectators, just beyond the ditch that ran along the road. I remember Riley going real still. Her eyes weren't on me anymore. They were fixed on the darkness between the trunks. "You hear that?" she said, already whispering. "Probably some kid," I said, though I didn't believe it. We hadn't passed any parked cars. No houses that close. Just ranch fences and barbed wire and a faded sign advertising fireworks that hadn't been lit in years. The sobbing came again, louder this time. Wet, broken sobs. The kind you don't fake. It wasn't a kid throwing a tantrum. This was grief raw, and open and wrong. "I think someone's hurt," I said, reaching for the door. Riley grabbed my arm. Just don't go in there. I looked at her. There was something about the way she said it that chilled me more than the crying. Not just fear, it was like she knew something. But I shook her off. I'm just gonna look. I'll be right back. I stepped out. The gravel crackled under my sneakers. The sobbing stopped out at first. I thought maybe the person had heard me, gone quiet out of fear or shame. I moved toward the tree line, careful not to slip into the ditch, and cupped my hands around my mouth. Hey, you okay? You need help? Silence. Then the sobbing started again, this time deeper into the woods, maybe 10 feet in. I could see nothing, just a wall of dark leaves and the twisted silhouettes of trunks. I looked back at Riley. She had both hands on the dashboard like she was ready to jump into the driver's seat and peel out. I stepped closer. That smell hit me again, metallic, sharp, almost like old blood soaked into wood. My skin prickled. Hello? I said again. That's when I heard it. The whisper. Don't leave me here. It didn't come from ahead of me. It came from behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the open road, the car, Riley wide-eyed behind the windshield. But the voice had been right at my ear, as if someone stood inches away. I froze. I swear I could feel something, not the windbrush, past me, like static, like breath. The sobbing started again, but this time it wasn't coming from ahead or behind. It was above, somewhere high in the trees. I don't know what made me look up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe something deep and primitive inside me wanted to confirm what the rational part of my brain refused to accept. I looked up, into the canopy, where branches interlocked like broken fingers. For a moment, I saw nothing. Then the leaves shifted, and I saw what I thought was a person crouched high in the fork of a tree, arms hugging the trunk, face buried in its own knees. Pale, too pale, like raw bone or wax left out in the sun. Then the face turned. I didn't see features, not really. Just holes where eyes should have been, and a mouth that didn't move when the whisper came again. Don't leave me here. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop to explain. I just yanked open the car door, shoved it into drive, and peeled off so hard gravel pinged against the undercarriage. Riley didn't ask what I saw until we were back in town. I didn't tell her. I just kept driving, but something had changed. She didn't want to go out driving after dark anymore, not even to the Sonic by the old water tower. And I started hearing things at night, sobs mostly, from the woods behind our house in South Lake. My dad said it was foxes. I knew better. It was the same sound, same rhythm, same choking breaths between the cries. I started dreaming of trees, of something watching from the canopy, something that couldn't climb down, something that was left there. Then Rayleigh stopped answering my texts. I figured she just moved on. She'd said enough times she wanted a clean break before college. But a few months later, I saw her mom at Kroger. Her face looked hollowed out, like she'd aged a decade since the spring. You still talk to her? She asked me, voice trembling. Not since June, I said. Why? She hesitated, then leaned in close. She won't come out of her room. She screams at night. And every morning we find leaves in her bed, branches, dirt under her nails. I didn't know what to say. Do you know what happened out there? Her mom asked. That night? I shook my head, but I did, and I knew. Better than to go back. The thing is, I drive FM 1709 almost every day now to get to work. I take the long way around sometimes, through Trophy Club or North Richland Hills, just to avoid that stretch of road. But sometimes, when I'm not paying attention, I end up there again. Windows down, radio low. And just for a second, long enough to make my stomach drop, I hear it again, crying from the tree line. They had been out there since just after sundown, that pocket of woods 30 miles east of Lufkin, deep in the thickets off Farm Road 1818, where the pine trees seemed to swell and twist in ways that didn't feel right. Real East Texas pines, old and tall, too tightly packed for comfort and so quiet sometimes you could hear your own blood moving. The hunting had been poor. Bobby Ray hadn't seen a thing but squirrels since they parked the truck around 6:15. And Dusty, who swore he'd bagged 2 dozen in the same spot just last season, was starting to feel like he'd dragged his cousin out for nothing but mosquito bites and sore knees. It was around 9:30 when they gave up. Stars overhead were crisp and silver and too bright for how little moon there was. And the wind had that odd silence to it, the kind where the trees look like they're moving but you can't hear them rustle. Dusty flicked his flashlight off and said something about cold beers back at the house and maybe trying again next weekend. Bobby Ray climbed into the truck with a grunt, rubbing at a crick in his back, and when Dusty turned the key, the old Chevy rattled to life like it had been asleep 100 years. They pulled out of the brush and back onto the old dirt cut-through. They used a trail barely wide enough for a single vehicle, eaten up with potholes and old ruts. That was when Bobby Ray spotted them eyes, 2 of them, glowing red like taillights, but low to the ground and too far apart. At first he thought maybe a coon or a fox had caught a reflection, but the way those eyes blinked slow, deliberate, like something watching with thought behind it, made his stomach flip. "You see that?" he asked Dusty. Dusty slowed the truck to a crawl and leaned over the wheel. "What the hell is that?" The eyes didn't move. They just stared. Red like embers, maybe 30 yards out into the tree line. Then they blinked again. "Not a deer," Bobby Ray said. "Not even close." He grabbed the spotlight from under the seat and flipped it on. A strong beam cut into the dark, slicing through brush and saplings, but when it hit the spot where the eyes had been, there was nothing. No animal. No movement. Just empty woods. "I know I saw something," Bobby Ray said, gripping the light tighter. Dusty didn't answer. He was staring dead ahead, mouth slightly open. "There," he whispered. On the other side of the road, farther off, maybe 10 yards from the truck, 2 more red eyes. Higher this time, taller than a man. Farther apart, Dusty cursed and threw the truck into drive. They hit a pothole so hard the dash rattled. Bobby Ray tried to keep the light steady, but it was bouncing like hell, and the forest around them suddenly felt like it was leaning in, like the pines themselves were watching. They were maybe a quarter-mile from the main road when something scraped along the side of the truck. Not branches, not bushes. Something else. It started near the front wheel, well like claws dragging across metal. Long, slow, deliberate. Dusty yelled and stomped the gas, and the engine screamed as they fishtailed through a bend. The scratching stopped, but only after it had reached the rear wheel. Bobby Ray looked back and could have sworn he saw something on 2 legs disappear into the trees, but the motion was wrong. It didn't run. It slid back like smoke being pulled away. They didn't stop until they hit the Exxon station off the highway, the one with flickering lights and the weird old man who sells bootleg DVDs out of his trunk. They pulled into the lot half-crooked, both of them breathing hard, dust swirling up behind them like smoke from a fire. That's when they saw it. 3 long claw marks, deep, clean, raked, down the driver's side door from the mirror to the rear handle. Steel peeled back like it was tinfoil. Dusty reached out and touched one, pulled his hand back like it burned. What the hell could do that? Bobby Ray asked. Not anything that belongs in these woods, Dusty said. They didn't go back. Out the next day, or the weekend after that, but things didn't stop there. 3 nights later, Dusty's dog, an old blue heeler named Hank, refused to go into the backyard. Just sat at the door and whined, teeth chattering, even though the air was still and warm. Dusty heard something move near the tree line behind the shed and went out with his 12 gauge. Found Hank the next morning curled under the porch, eyes rolled white and legs stiff. No wounds, no blood. Just dead. The next week, Bobby Ray's niece went missing. 11 years old, disappeared from her backyard in Dibble around dusk. The search party found her teddy bear 15 feet up in a pine tree behind the house, not dropped, wedged between the branches like someone or something had placed it there deliberately. After that, Bobby Ray got twitchy, started sleeping, with a rifle by the bed. Claimed he heard footsteps outside his trailer some nights, too heavy for a person, too slow. Sometimes he said he heard scratching on the tin roof, just faint, like nails on paper. Then he vanished. His truck was found, parked off FM 58 just outside Angelina National Forest. Keys still in the ignition, driver's side door open. Same 3 claw marks on the door. Search and rescue spent 3 days combing the woods. Dogs wouldn't track past a certain point, would whine and pull their handlers in the opposite direction. The spot where Bobby Ray's flashlight was found had no footprints, just disturbed pine needles and broken branches like something big had moved through, but no tracks. Not even a scuff from a boot. Dusty started drinking heavy after that. Quit his job. Moved in with his sister and the Cogdutches, started sleeping in the basement. He stopped going outside at night altogether, said the pines whisper now. Said sometimes they blinked. And one night, about 2 months later, he called his sister screaming. Said he saw the eyes again outside the basement window, glowing red in the reflection of the washing machine. Said he heard something laughing low and gurgling, like a cough that couldn't get out. They found him the next morning. Basement window smashed from the inside. No sign of struggle. Just dust on the sill and 3 deep claw marks in the concrete. Wall near the furnace. And no one saw Dusty again. People still hunt out that way, of course. The woods are thick and game's good if you know where to look. But everyone around Lufkin knows not to go too deep. And never, ever after dark. And if you're driving down FM 1818 and you see something in the trees, far apart and glowing red, don't stop. Don't look. Don't think. Just drive. Because whatever's out there, whatever lives between the pines, it watches. And when it scratches, it marks you. They say the devil's backbone cuts through the hill country like a spine of bone understretched. Skin-jagged limestone outcrops and twisting roads, long shadows of cedar and oak crawling over the blacktop like fingers. Old-timers in Blanco and Wimberley talk about that stretch of Ranch Road 32 like it's something alive. Or worse, something dead that still moves. It's where drunk teens see lights that shouldn't be there. Where lone drivers swear they've been followed, then left alone with their hearts pounding and their ears ringing. But the locals don't talk about it too loud. You only really hear the stories from bartenders and gas station clerks late at night, when the cicadas quiet and the air gets thick like molasses. The one that stuck with me, and I've been following this stuff for years, was about a sheriff named Walt Dunning. Served Hayes County for 26 years. Kept things orderly, quiet, the way folks like them. Back in '03, Walt ran into something on that road that he didn't like to talk about. Afterward, he changed. Started drinking more, taking his cruiser home with him even when off duty, sleeping in the car like he was expecting something to return. Then one day he just up and retired. Moved to East Texas, left no forwarding address. The official record says Walt responded to a 911 call on the backbone around 11:47 p.m. on August 14, 2003. A tourist couple had pulled off near one of the scenic overlooks. They'd seen something strange in the rear view. A car, a black one, old school muscle, followed them too close, too fast. High beams off, but engine screaming like it was redlining. When they turned off into the gravel lot, the thing shot past and vanished into the night like smoke. Walt Gop. They're 20 minutes later. Check the overlook, nothing. Did a slow drive up the backbone, taking his time, light sweeping over the rocks and brush. At about mile marker 13, just past a bend the locals call Widow's Turn, he saw it. The tail end of a black 67 Pontiac GTO disappearing into the night. He flipped the lights, floored it, and radioed dispatch that he was in pursuit. And then the dash cam cut to static. They found Walt parked on the side of the road about 3 hours later, engine running, lights dead. He was slumped in the front seat, eyes open but unfocused, mumbling something about a road that won't end. Took him a week before he could give a coherent report. And even then, he wouldn't say much. Just that he'd lost the GTO somewhere. Around mile marker 21, where the road dips and the fog rolls in even on dry nights. He said the car never turned, never slowed. Just kept going. Straight ahead. Into nothing. There's footage of that night, or there was. Hays County Sheriff's Office logged it as corrupted solid static from the moment the GTO appeared until the cruiser rolled to a stop. You can see the time stamp flicker, hear the audio squeal. Then silence. Now, I wouldn't have believed any of this if it hadn't happened to me last summer. I was driving west on Ranch Road 32 around 10:15 p.m., heading back from a freelance shoot in San Marcos. I'm a documentary guy, used to do wedding videos until I caught a break filming a local cryptid doc, and things kind of took off. Lately, I'd been gathering material for a short on Texas ghost roads. Devil's Backbone was supposed to be a B-roll location. Just drone shots and night ambience. Nothing dramatic. I just passed the old rock wall near the overlook when I saw the headlights appear behind me. No big deal, plenty of late drivers out that way. But these lights were ... off, too low to the ground. Bright but yellowish, like old sealed beam halogens. They swerved slightly, and suddenly this thing was tailing me. So close I could see the glint of chrome in my mirror dot at first. I thought it was some jackass in a restored classic trying to show off. But when I tapped my brakes, he didn't back off, just revved. The sound rolled over me like thunder low, guttural, mechanical rage. I sped up, so did he. The road twists hard past Widow's Turn, and I took it faster than I should have. My tires chirped, the rear wobbled, but I stayed on. The lights behind me didn't waver. I tried to pull over, let him pass, but as soon as I slowed, he backed off too. Like he wanted to stay right there. Breathing down my neck dot at mile marker 18, the fog came. Sudden and thick, like cotton soaked in milk. Visibility dropped to 10 feet, maybe less. I flipped on the hazards and slowed to a crawl. Checked the mirror dot empty dot no lights dot no engine growl dot, just the hiss of tires on damp asphalt and the rhythmic thump of my own heartbeat. I figured he'd peeled off, or maybe there was a turnout I missed. But as I eased forward, I heard it again, that unmistakable, snarling rev. Right in my left ear, like the engine was in the next seat. I jerked the wheel, nearly slid into the ditch. Nothing there. I checked the back seat. Empty. My windows were fogging, but the air was dry. Real dry. Static crackled on the radio even though it was off. Then the fog lit up behind me. No sound. Just blinding light, swelling like a train was pulling into my soul. I floored it. The rest is a blur. I don't remember the turns. Don't remember the fog lifting. Just the sudden absence of sound, of light, of pressure, like waking up from a fever dream. I pulled into a gas station in Blanco and threw up on the pavement. Didn't even buy gas. I sat in the car for nearly an hour shaking. Later, I reviewed my dashcam footage. I'd installed a good One Night Owl Pro with infrared. Should have captured everything it did up until 10:23 p.m. Then nothing but static. I brought it to a tech in Austin who owed me a favor. He dug into the file, cleaned the audio. What he found chilled me. In the static, beneath the hiss, there was a voice. Buried deep in the spectrogram. Male, low, repeating 3 words in a loop. Turn the wheel. That was it. Over and over. Slight variations in tone, like it wasn't just a loop, it was spoken each time. I haven't driven the backbone since. Haven't even driven at night much. I still film, still edit, but something's different now. Sometimes when I'm parked in my driveway, I'll hear a distant engine idling, low and angry. When I check the street, nothing's there. But my neighbors have started to notice a black car cruising the block. Just a glimpse, they say. No plate, headlights off. Then gone. I started digging deeper, not just into Walt's story, but into others' accidents with no cause. Bodies found miles from their last known location, engines torn from their mounts, cars burned from the inside out. Always on the backbone. Always at night. One detail keeps repeating, the black GTO, but the kicker? There's no record of a 67 GTO with those modifications murdered out paint. No plate, custom front fascia ever being registered in Texas or anywhere. Some say it's just an urban legend. A story locals tell to keep teenagers from speeding down dangerous roads. But here's the thing about legends. They don't show up on your dash cam. They don't tell you in your dreams, and they sure as hell don't whisper in your ear at 60 miles an hour. I don't care what you believe. If you're ever out near the backbone after dark, and you see those twin yellow eyes appear behind you, do yourself a favor. Don't brake, don't turn, and whatever you do, don't listen. They say the long stretch of Highway 87 between San Angelo and Big Spring is the loneliest road in West Texas. And I believe it. Drive it at night and you'll see what I mean. The land flattens out into nothing, the dark horizon so wide it makes your stomach turn a little. There's no real sound out there except your tires on the asphalt and the occasional wind cutting across the plains. You don't see towns so much as you see their absence. Maybe the low glint of a gas station canopy in the distance or a blinking cell tower, but for the most part, it's just blackness and the white lines zipping past under your headlights. It's a no man's land, a dead stretch of road that feels like it goes on forever. I'd heard the stories long before I saw him myself. They started popping up in trucker forums and old local Facebook groups back in 2015 or so, though folks swore sightings went back way further, but nobody took it seriously at first. Just another roadside ghost story. One of those things people whisper when they're trying to stay awake on a long haul. Still, it was always the same details that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The way they all described him. A man walking along the shoulder at 3 a.m., always dragging one leg, arms stiff at his sides, head slightly lowered like he was studying the pavement. And no matter how fast you were going or how far you'd already driven, he was always there ahead of you again. Always the same limp, the same posture. Like the road looped around him somehow. I never put much stock in it. I'm a mechanic by trade, not a storyteller. I grew up in Sweetwater and lived in San Angelo most of my life. My brother Rick worked oil rigs near Big Spring, and I'd take Highway 87 to go visit him now and then. Sometimes I'd make the drive late, especially when I was younger and didn't think much about the risks. Deer, drunks, black ice in winter, you'd think those were the dangers. But it's the stuff you can't swerve around that gets under your skin. It was early October when it happened to me. I remember the date because I just spent the weekend helping Rick replace a transmission in his beat-up Dodge Ram. Took US all Saturday and most of Sunday, but we got it done, and he insisted on grilling steaks that night as a thank you. I didn't leave Big Spring until after midnight. I was tired, road-weary, and a little buzzed off his homemade sweet tea. I figured I'd be home before 3 if I kept a steady pace. That's when I saw him. First time, he was maybe 200 yards ahead. A figure walking the shoulder, just on the edge of my high beams. It's not unusual to see someone walking out there, even at night. Transients, folks with busted cars, or someone dumb enough to hike the distance between rest stops. What got me was the way he moved, slow, off balance, like he was dragging something. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't something he was carrying, it was his leg. His right one, bent oddly at the knee, dragging through the gravel. I slowed, thinking I should maybe check on him, but something in my gut said no. It was like trying to force two magnets together wrong. I passed him doing about 40. I got a good look at his face. Not that I wanted to he looked off. Wrong in that way you can't quite name. He wore a thin white shirt, the kind you'd wear under a suit, stained dark around the collar, sleeves too long. His skin was too pale for someone walking. The West Texas night and his eyes didn't reflect the headlights. That part messed with me the most. Even animals' eyes shine a little, catch some of the light. His were just dark, flat, dead. I accelerated, not caring that I was getting into the 80s. I watched my rear view. Nothing. No figure on the road. No movement at all, but 20 minutes later, just past the county line, I saw him again. Same posture, same limp. Same spot on the shoulder, like he'd never moved at all, like I'd never passed him. That stretch of road is mostly straight. Not many ways he could have cut across or hitched a ride and gotten ahead of me. I kept driving. Didn't look too long that time. Just told myself I was seeing things. That maybe I dozed off, doubled back somehow. Anything but the truth clawing around the edges of my mind. Third time I saw him, I almost ran off the road. He was closer now, just barely outside the lane. I swerved, my tires catching the rumble strip, heart pounding so loud I could hear it. In my teeth. I shouted something, don't remember what, and sped up. Didn't slow again until I saw the lights of San Angelo in the distance. Didn't breathe right for hours. I didn't tell anyone at first. What was I supposed to say? Hey Rick, I saw a ghost with a limp and a 1,000-yard stare walking the shoulder of 87. He'd have laughed me back to Sweetwater, but I started paying attention. Reading every post, every forum thread, even the crank stuff. People saw him, lots of them, truckers mostly, night drivers. Always between 2:50 and 3:10 a.m. Some said he wore a necktie. Others said his mouth was open too wide. Some folks claimed they stopped for him and couldn't find him. One guy swore he pulled over to check on the man, only to find deep scratch marks along the side of his trailer the next morning, like something had tried to crawl inside, and always the same ending. No matter how fast you go, he's always there. Somewhere ahead, I became obsessed. Drove that road every weekend for months, trying to see him again. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse, a flicker of movement just outside the headlights, but it never felt like that first night. Until the night I brought someone with me. Tasha, my cousin's daughter, had just turned 19. She was the kind of kid who watched horror movies with the lights off, never scared. She'd heard the stories too, grew up on the edge of San Angelo, and when I told her I'd seen the shuffling man, she all but begged me to take her. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We left around 1:30 a.m., just enough time to hit the sweet spot near the middle of the route. It was dead quiet. Even the air felt wrong, thick and still. We passed the old Pecos River Bridge, the ghost town turnoff, a few lonely gas pumps without names. Then, at 3:02 a.m. on the dot, there he was. He stood still this time, not walking, just standing on the shoulder. Facing away, Tasha rolled down her window before I could stop her. Hey! She called out. The figure twitched. Not turned. twitched, like a puppet being pulled by strings. First the head, then the arm. Then the whole body jerked around to face us. He had no mouth. I slammed the gas pedal, tires screeching. Tasha screamed, window still halfway down. We didn't talk until we hit city lights. Even then, she wouldn't look at me. Her face had gone. Pale, her hands shaking so bad she dropped her phone trying to text someone. She doesn't talk about it anymore. Won't drive that road at night. Moved to Houston 6 months later, said she wanted to be as far from the desert as possible. But it didn't end there. I kept seeing him, even on other roads, always at 3 a.m., always dragging that same leg. Sometimes closer now. Sometimes I'd glance in the mirror and catch a glimpse of that pale white shirt behind my car, just far. Enough back to doubt my eyes. I stopped driving altogether after I woke one night to the sound of gravel crunching outside my house. I lived 10 miles from Highway 87. No sidewalk. No reason anyone should be walking past. I looked through the PEEPHOLE. But the next morning, there were long, parallel tracks in the dust leading up to my driveway. One of them a clean boot print. The other a long drag. I don't sleep much anymore. I keep the lights on. I've sealed every window, stopped watching the clock. Because I know he's still out there. Still walking. Still shuffling his way along. The long black snake of Highway 87. And no matter how far you drive, how fast you go, eventually you'll see him too. They'd left the reception late, maybe too late, and Travis had been nursing a headache since Port Lavaca. Too much noise. Too many people pressing drinks into his hands. Too many rounds of "you're next" after the bouquet toss. He hated. Weddings always had. The only reason he went was because Nicole made him. Her cousin got married in some rented beach hall, and by the time they'd hugged all the relatives, posed for enough photos to fill 2 scrapbooks, and said their goodbyes, it was nearly 1 in the morning. Nicole had kicked off her heels in the parking lot and tossed them in the back seat. She rode barefoot, with her legs pulled up into the passenger seat and a black shawl wrapped around her shoulders. The headlights stretched ahead like yellow fingers clawing the road. They were on Highway 183, cutting up toward Goliad with a window cracked just enough to let in some air. The radio was off. The silence was thick and sleepy. That stretch of road is lonely at night. Nothing but thick stands of mesquite and brushwood, and every mile or so, a barbed wire fence leading off into God knows what. No lights. No towns for miles, just Texas darkness. The kind that seems to press against the car like a living thing. Travis's. Eyes were starting to get heavy when Nicole shifted in her seat and said, "Did you see that?" He blinked, focusing. "What?" "I thought I saw something in the ditch. Probably a deer," he said. "There's always deer out here." No. It was crawling. He frowned, glancing at her, then back at the road. "You sure?" Nicole didn't answer right away. Her shoulders were stiff. She leaned forward, peering into the darkness on her side of the road. And then it came out of the ditch. It was sudden, like it had been waiting. One moment, the road was clear. The next, it was there. Crawling on long, pale limbs, dragging itself out of the drainage trench on the side of the highway. It moved fast, but not right. Like a man who'd forgotten how knees work. The joints were all wrong, the arms too long. The torso was naked and colorless, slick with something that glistened in the light. Nicole screamed. Travis slammed on the brakes. Too late. The thing hit the hood. No went through it, not like a body, not like meat. It folded no bones like thick cloth soaked in blood, and then they were driving through it. It smeared across the windshield in streaks of pinkish gray and then disappeared into the air behind them. Travis swerved hard, tires screeching on the pavement, and brought the car to a shuddering stop on the shoulder. Nicole was shaking. Her hands clutched the dash. Her mouth was open, gasping but not saying anything. "What the hell was that?" Travis said. His voice cracked. She shook her head, eyes wide. It didn't have a face. They sat in silence. No other cars. Number. Noise but the engine ticking down and the whisper of wind through mesquite branches. Travis got out. He didn't want to. Every part of him screamed not to. But some dumb part of his brain had convinced him they might have hit a man. Some disfigured, freakishly tall man who'd been crawling across the road. Maybe he was high. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe he needed help. He walked around to the front of the car. No blood. No dent. No sign they'd hit anything. The hood was cold and clean. He crouched, checked under the car. Nothing. Then he went to the back. That's where he saw them bloody handprints. Dozens of them, some smeared, some perfect. They coated the bumper and stretched across the trunk like someone had tried to claw their way in. The prints weren't right either. Too long. The fingers weren't shaped like fingers, more like little arms themselves, jointed, double-knuckled. Travis stared, trying to process it. Then Nicole opened the door and called his name. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Travis? He walked slowly back to the driver's side, climbed in, and started the engine. What was it? She whispered. He shook his head. We didn't hit anything. She didn't believe him. He didn't believe himself. They drove the rest of the way to Goliad in silence. They stayed at her parents' place just outside of town. A 2-story house on a wide plot of land surrounded by oak trees. Nicole's folks were asleep when they arrived. They didn't wake them. Just went straight upstairs, locked the door, and lay in bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. In the morning, the car was clean. No handprints. No blood. Not a smudge. Nicole stood there, arms folded, staring at the spotless bumper like she wanted to scream. Travis tried to explain it away. Maybe it had been a hallucination. Maybe they were both exhausted. Maybe it was an animal with mange, or something worse that their brains had twisted into a nightmare. But the next day, Nicole found something in the laundry room. Her black shawl she'd dropped it in the hamper that night was soaked with something thick and dark. Not blood exactly. Not red. More like a dark pink with a foul smell like sweet meat left too long in the heat. It had dried stiff, and the whole house reeked of it. They burned the shawl in the backyard. Her father didn't ask questions. 2 days later, Nicole started waking up with scratches on her legs. Thin, shallow, but too many to be accidental. And always in patterns, parallel lines curving like fingers. One night, Travis found them on his own chest. He swore he hadn't done it. She stopped sleeping. Then she stopped eating. Something in her had cracked. He saw it in her eyes. She stopped talking about it, but she couldn't let it go. She kept walking to the edge of the yard at night, staring out at the tree line like she was waiting for something to come out. On the 5th night, she didn't come back in. He went outside around midnight and found her shawl, not the one they'd burned, hanging from the low branch of a tree near the back fence. The cloth rippled in the breeze. He reached for it, and it disintegrated in his hands. Nicole was gone. No signs of a struggle. No footprints. Just gone. They searched for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, posters. He told the cops everything, or almost everything. Left out the creature. Said she'd wandered off after a fight. They didn't believe him, but they didn't have a better answer either. The official story was that she disappeared. Maybe she ran off. Maybe she drowned in the river. Maybe coyotes dragged her away. But Travis knew better. He stayed in Goliad after that. He didn't know why. Maybe part of him thought she'd come back. Maybe part of him wanted to see it again. The thing from the ditch. The faceless crawler. Sometimes he'd drive out to that stretch of 183, park on the shoulder, and just sit. There, headlights off, staring into the weeds. Last week he got his wish dot. It was just after midnight. No moon. He was parked near mile marker 52 when something shifted in the ditch. A long, pale arm reached up over the edge. Then another. Then a torso. It moved like wet cloth again, like it had no spine, no bones, just folds. Folds of skin were a face. Should have been. And when it turned toward the car, Travis saw something inside those folds. Something twitching. He didn't move. Couldn't dot it dragged itself closer to the car. And then he saw her dot Nicole dot, or what was left of her dot her face was. Deep inside the thing. Stretched and twisted, like her features had been absorbed, flattened, pressed into the meat of it. Her eyes still blinked. She reached for him, and her fingers were too long. He didn't remember starting the engine. Didn't remember driving. Home. But in the morning, the bumper was covered in bloody HANDPRINTS. Again. Dead radio. West Texas Highway 90. They say there's a stretch of Highway 90 out in West Texas, just past Sanderson but still far from Del Rio, where the air gets too still and the road too straight, and time itself seems to stutter like a bad cassette. It's not on any official map, not really, just a length of pale blacktop clawing through the Chihuahuan desert, lined with broken fences, sun-bleached cattle bones, and a horizon so empty it could swallow a man whole. Around mile marker 223, something changes. Truckers talk about it in hushed voices over gas station coffee in places like Marathon or Alpine. Families who've driven that route at night just don't anymore. Something about the silence, they say. Something about the way the radio dies every single time at exactly that spot. It's not static at first. That'd be normal. But the thing is, when you hit 223, your radio doesn't just go quiet. It chokes. Whether you're blasting Tejano or talk radio or even some CD you burned back in college, it coughs like it's drowning. Then it hisses. Then comes the whispering. It always starts the same, just low enough to think you're imagining it, like wind scraping over gravel. A soft, breathy voice in Spanish, whispering nonsense. Or at least it sounds like nonsense until you listen harder. One guy, an MTAT of Presidio, swears the voice said the name of his dead daughter. Another woman, tourist from Lubbock, told the sheriff she pulled over shaking and crying after hearing the name her grandfather used to call her as a child. Only him. No one else ever knew it. There's no tower out there. No transmitter. Hell, even cell reception dies around 220. Just endless desert. Just that cracked, sunburned road that never seems to end. I never paid it much mind. I grew up in Marfa, spent most of my life working odd jobs around the Big Bend region. Used to deliver parts from Fort Stockton down to Del Rio, so I knew 90. Like the lines in my palm. That spot mile 223, yeah, I'd noticed the dead radio before. Everyone did. It was like a ghost sneeze. It happened, it passed, and no one wanted to dwell on it too long. But I was never the kind to believe in whispers or spirits or any of that border town superstition. At least I wasn't until October of last year. Had a buddy, Greg Alvarez, who ran the little junkyard outside of Alpine. Tough old bastard. Smoked too much, talked too loud, and always had some bullshit story about rattlesnakes in his outhouse or chupacabras in his garage. One night he calls me up, middle of the damn night, says he's got something I need to see. Come now, he said. Don't wait till morning. You got to see this while it's still warm. He sounded scared. Greg didn't get scared. I threw on jeans and boots and hit the road in my old GMC. Took 90 west from Marfa, heading toward his place. The moon was bloated and yellow, hovering low over the mesquite like a watchful eye. I remember it was dry as hell that week, too. Everything looked like it could catch fire from a glance. By the time I passed mile marker 210, I was getting drowsy. Window down, radio humming some old Freddie Fender tune. Then 221, then 222. Right on cue, at 223, the radio cut out. Only this time it wasn't static. Not right away. There was a second, a weird, fluttering silence like the whole desert took a breath in and didn't let it out. Then came the whispering. Soft, urgent, in Spanish. Not just random words either, clear. Phrases, murmured like a prayer or a warning. El hombre no está solo. El viene. Todos vienen. The man is not alone. He comes. They all come. I slowed the truck. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Samuel. That part hit like a hammer. That was my name. It said it again. This time softer, almost affectionate. Samuel, Yasabi's low-Q heisist. Samuel, you already know what you did. I don't remember pulling over. 1 second I was listening, hard slamming my ribs like it was trying to escape. The next, I was on the shoulder, engine idling, headlights stabbing into the dark. Nothing. Moved out there. No other cars. No animals. Just dust and thorn bushes. I killed the engine, turned off the lights. Sat there in the dark with my breath fogging the windshield. The radio was still whispering. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Dead silence. I turned the key again. Radio back to normal. Like it never happened. I drove the rest of the way to Greg's place with the volume all the way down. When I got there, I found the gates wide open. That was odd. He always kept them chained after 10. The smell hit me first. Something metallic, coppery. Blood, or something close to it. I pulled in slow, high beams sweeping across rusted car husks and scrap piles. Then I saw the office. The door had been kicked in, the windows smashed. Inside, Greg was slumped behind. His desk, eyes wide, throat cut so clean it barely bled. On the radio, still playing behind him, a whisper. Just a whisper. I couldn't understand it. It wasn't Spanish. It wasn't anything I'd ever heard. Sheriff Jensen came out with 2 deputies, found no prints, no sign of struggle. Just Greg, dead and staring, and that damn whisper still oozing. From the busted radio. They bagged it as evidence, but the tech at the station swore it never turned on again. Even plugged in, it was just a lifeless box. After that night, I started digging. Old archives, sheriff logs, local legends. Turns out, mile 223 has history. Dark, ugly history. Back in the 50s, there was a state-run labor camp out there. Nothing official, just a chain-link enclosure and some trailers where they kept migrant workers under observation. Border Patrol would round up men, sometimes entire families, and keep them in that spot before bussing them out east to detention centers. But a storm hit one night in 1958. Flash flood swallowed the camp, washed it clean off the map. They say over 30 people drowned in their trailers, children too. Bodies were never recovered, just vanished into the sand and mud. The government bulldozed the site, paved over it. That part of 90 was laid down in 61. Locals didn't talk about it much. Some whispered the workers never left, that their voices still echoed through the static, trying to warn travelers, trying to reach home, trying to accuse. I haven't driven that road since. Not long after Greg died, I started getting phone calls. Never a number, always late. When I picked up, it was just breathing. Or sometimes, God help me, the same voice that said my name in the truck. A month later, my niece called me, said she was driving from Van Horn to Del Rio. Guess what? She said, laughing. At mile 223, the radio went nuts. And I swear, Uncle Sam, I thought I heard your name. I told her to never drive that way again. Never, she thought. I was joking. She didn't come home. Car found wrapped around a mesquite tree 15 miles. Past the marker. No skid marks. No animals. Just a wrecked car and a broken body. The radio? Still playing when the cops showed. Static, then whispers. They don't believe me, of course. Who would? But I know what I heard. What I still hear. And if you ever find yourself driving Highway 90 West, somewhere past Sanderson, and your radio dies around mile 223, don't turn it off. Don't pull over. Don't listen. And for God's sake, if it says your name, just keep driving. The sun was dropping low over the Texas Panhandle when Mark Hanley's fuel light blinked to life. He was somewhere off Highway 87, about 40 miles south of Amarillo, an ugly stretch of flatland that seemed to swallow everything: radio signals, cell coverage, sense of direction. His Silverado had barely rolled past the last speed limit sign when the engine coughed like it might give up altogether. He cursed, slapped the steering wheel, and glanced at the console. The gauge needle hovered just below E, and the GPS had gone mute 10 minutes ago. He tried to pull up his map app, but the phone might as well have been a brick. Dead zone. He knew he should have filled up back in Lubbock, but he'd been in a hurry, distracted by the fight with his brother, the tension that hung between them like an old grudge neither one wanted to name. Now he was stuck in the middle of nowhere, with the kind of heat that warped the horizon and turned asphalt into molasses. The wind outside carried dust and the faint smell of something dead in the roadside scrub. He was watching the road for any sign of a turnoff or gas station when he saw it, a glint of white, then a faded red sign rising like a ghost out of the distance. A Texaco. He blinked, thought maybe it was a mirage. But as he got closer, he could see the outline of a squat little building. One of those pre-70s gas stations with a flat awning out front and a single island with 2 rusting pumps. There were no other cars, no modern signage, just that Red Star logo bleached by sun and decades of wind. A single overhead light buzzed to life as he pulled in, throwing off a dim yellow glow even though the sun was still half up. Mark rolled down his window. The air smelled of old oil, dust, and something like burnt rubber. Behind the glass window of the service booth, an old man sat in a metal chair, not moving, just staring like he'd been waiting. Mark stepped out. The heat clung to his skin. "You open?" He called. The old man didn't answer right away. He had to be pushing 80, dressed in oil-stained overalls and a cap that might have once been navy blue. He looked up, slow as molasses, then nodded once. Wordlessly, he got to his feet and shuffled over to the pump. Mark popped the gas cap, watched the old man lift the nozzle, fit it into place, and begin filling the tank. The numbers on the old pump didn't spin right, jerky, slow, like the thing was struggling to count each gallon. There was a strange static in the air, not a sound exactly, more like the pressure change before a storm. He tried to make conversation. "This place ain't on the map. I thought I'd gone too far." The man didn't answer. "You get a lot of travelers out here?" The man just stared at the pump. After a few seconds, he said in a voice like sandpaper, "Not as many as we." "Used to." Mark nodded, unsure what to say next. The pump dinged once. Full. The old man withdrew the nozzle, screwed the cap back on, and stepped back. Mark pulled out a 20 from his wallet and held it out. The man took it with 2 fingers and turned without a word. "Thanks," Mark said. "Really, you saved my ass." The man paused at the door to the booth, looked back over his shoulder with eyes that were cloudy but sharp, like old glass knives. Then he went inside and shut the door. Mark drove off with a weird sense he'd stepped into some crack in time. He glanced in the rearview and saw the station shrink behind him, swallowed by dusk and distance. The road seemed to realign itself after that. The next hour passed in a blur. By the time he hit Amarillo, he'd convinced himself the whole thing was just some forgotten relic, maybe even someone's private land still operating off the books, but it gnawed at him. The silence of the attendant, the emptiness, that strange, almost heavy feeling in the air. So the next week, he decided to go back. Thought maybe he'd bring the guy a beer or a pack of smokes. Something. He took the same highway, counted the same mile markers, and slowed as he approached the same stretch. But there was no Texaco, no building, no pumps. Just a cracked concrete slab covered in weeds and the skeleton of an old oak tree that had been burned down to a blackened stump. He pulled over, got out, walked around like maybe he'd missed it somehow, but there was nothing. Not even tire marks. A truck rolled past him, kicking up dust. The driver, an older man in a John Deere hat, slowed when he saw Mark standing there. He leaned out his window. "You lost?" Mark shaded his eyes. "Was there a Texaco here?" "Old one, just off the road. I filled up last week." The man frowned. "Buddy, there ain't been a station here in 40 years. Mark blinked. "No, there was. Right here." "I paid in cash. Old guy pumping gas." The man shook his head. "Son, that station burned down in '81. Caught fire during a storm. Lightning hit the pump. Whole damn thing went up. Owner was inside. They never found the body." The wind picked up, carrying dust and the faint stink of scorched wood. "You sure you were here?" The man asked. Mark didn't answer. Just stood there, staring at the slab. He came back again the next week. And again. Each time, the lot stayed empty. The weeds grew higher. He brought photos, printed out maps, tried to find records. Nothing. He even visited the county archive in Amarillo. Dug through yellowed newspaper pages and microfiche. Finally found the article, July 23, 1981. Lightning strike sparks fatal. Blaze at Old Texaco. It was a short piece. No photos. No name listed for the owner. Just said the fire spread so fast they couldn't do anything but watch. By the time volunteers got out there, the place was nothing but cinders and melted metal. One person unaccounted for. Presumed dead. The article said the gas station had stood there since 1953. Never modernized, never updated. Most folks had stopped using it once the new Exxon went up 20 miles north. Still, the old man had kept it running. Some people said he didn't even know how to retire. Mark stopped sleeping well after that. Sometimes he'd wake up and swear he heard the ding of the pump bell in his ears. Sometimes he'd go out to his truck and smell oil and smoke on the seats, even though he hadn't driven in days. One night he dreamed he was back there. But the sky was pitch black and the station was burning. The flames didn't move like fire. They clung slow and thick like syrup. He saw the old man standing at the pump, untouched, staring through the fire with hollow eyes. When Mark stepped closer, the man opened his mouth and there was nothing inside. Just black, bottomless dark, like the whole sky had fallen into him. Mark woke up gasping. He tried to tell people. His brother, a few friends. They said he was tired, stressed. Maybe he dreamed the whole thing. But he knew what he saw, what he felt. He drove the stretch a dozen more times, always hoping to see that red star again. Once he thought he caught a glimpse in the distance, pulled over so fast he nearly ran the truck off the road. But it was nothing. Just heat shimmer. And an old billboard for some failed real estate venture. Years passed. Mark got married, had a kid, tried to forget. But sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet, he'd hear the sound again, that slow mechanical ding like a call. Across time. Once, Driving through Amarillo with his wife asleep beside him, he looked in the mirror and saw the old man sitting in the truck bed. Eyes locked on him, lips moving as if trying to speak words that had no sound. The image vanished when he blinked. They say some places don't die right. That when a man puts too much of himself into a place, he stays behind. Maybe he keeps doing what he always did. Maybe he waits for people to come by, just so he can do the job one more time. Maybe he forgets he's dead at all. And maybe, just maybe, if you're desperate enough, if you're out of options and the night is closing in, he'll be there, silent, waiting, gas pump in hand, but you better pay in cash and you better not come back. It started like every dumb weekend trip starts in Texas. Hot, flat, endless stretches of two-lane blacktop and a playlist full of bad decisions. 5 of them packed into a red 2007 Honda CR-V, windows down to keep the rattling AC from choking out the speakers. They were heading north on I-35, away from the heat and sameness of Dallas-Fort Worth and toward Denton, then further, supposedly to some creek past Pilot Point where one of them, Tasha, said her cousin used to go skinny dipping at night. Said it was chill and weirdly haunted, but like in a cute way. The car smelled like sunscreen and gas station Takis. Mia, the one riding behind the driver, had pulled her knees up to her chest and was holding her phone out at arm's length, filming everyone while spitting dumb questions in that peppy influencer voice she used when trying to go viral. "What's your biggest fear?" she said, dragging the camera across each of their faces, making sure to catch the sunset just right in the rear glass. "Running out of beer before we get there," said Cody, the driver, who'd stolen 2 six-packs from his brother's fridge. "Ticks," said Tasha, "and snakes, and like caves, small ones." "Getting stuck with you guys in the middle of nowhere," said Jules, who was trying not to smile but was already 3 deep into Cody's beer and halfway into the front passenger seat. Mia rolled her eyes and panned back to herself, all blonde hair and sunglasses too big for her face. "Okay, y'all are lame. Say something spooky." She reversed the camera and pointed it toward the rearview mirror, catching her own reflection. "And Cody's and Jules' and wait," she said, eyebrows creasing. "Who the hell is that?" The car jolted slightly. Cody looked back over his shoulder. "What?" Mia frowned and pulled the phone closer. She scrubbed back a few seconds in the video, squinting. There, just behind her own face in the mirror, was another one. Pale, gray eyes. Stretched grin like it had been painted on. "Is that you, Tash?" Mia said. Tasha leaned forward from the back corner and peered at the screen. No. Ooh, what is that?" The face was hovering just above Mia's shoulder, clearly not hers, not anyone's. It looked dead, or maybe just empty, but unmistakably real. Not some weird reflection trick, not a double exposure. As they watched, the image wobbled slightly on the screen as if the mirror had been breathing. Cody snorted. "Probably a filter." "No, dude, I didn't put one on. Look." Mia showed him the app. "No filters. No effects. Then Tasha said, quietly, "There's a hand on your shoulder." "What?" She pointed. "There, on your left side, in the reflection." Mia turned her head slowly, then reached back and touched her own shoulder. Nothing, but the video clearly showed a pale, long-fingered hand draped over her like it had been there the whole time. She shuddered and shut off the video. They rode the rest of the way with the windows up. By the time they got to the creek, the sun had dipped under the flat horizon. Texas did that. It didn't dim slowly, it just snapped off like a light. 1 minute, dusk. The next, black as the inside of a locked trunk. They parked the car just off a gravel pullout, headlights cutting through shoulder-high grass and the gnarled branches of mesquite trees that grew like broken bones out of the red dirt. Tasha was already trying to brush it off. "It's just a trick of the mirror, y'all." My cousin used to say this place is all weird reflections. She called it the cradle, something about the water messing with your head. Cody rolled his eyes and popped the trunk, tossing out blankets and a half-deflated floaty. "No offense," Jules said, "but your cousin's kind of a freak." "She disappeared last summer," Tasha replied, tone flat. "Oh. They didn't go swimming, not really. The water was too low and full of slick algae, more like a narrow stream than a creek. But they laid out blankets, opened beers, and passed around Mia's phone, watching the clip again and again. The face was always there, the hand too. Sometimes it seemed like the smile twitched wider when you weren't looking directly at it. Around midnight, they started daring each other to look in the mirrors, not the phone actual mirrors. The car's side mirrors, the rear view, even a makeup compact Mia had in her bag. And in every single one, eventually, if you stared long enough, something showed up. A second face, or a hand in the background, or a dark shape crouching just outside the frame, always just about to move. By 1:30, they were too scared to sleep. Cody kept joking that it was all fake, a prank, but he was the first one to slam the car door and check the backseat twice. They tried to leave, but the car wouldn't start. Dead battery. Cody swore he hadn't left the lights on, but Mia said she saw them flicker at one point when she'd looked in the mirror. Tasha refused to get back inside the car. "It's them," she said, voice trembling. "The mirror people. My cousin used to talk about them. Said they live backwards. That if you see one too long, it learns your face, slips through, follows you." "No offense," Cody said again, "but your cousin sounds like she needed meds. She told me if you look at them and smile, they smile back. If you turn your back on them, they get closer." They left the car and walked along the road toward the highway, using their phone flashlights, trying to call someone. No signal. For miles, it was just black fields and empty silence. No frogs, no crickets. Just wind and the occasional whisper of grass like someone brushing their fingers across your neck. Jules turned around suddenly and screamed. "What?" Mia gasped. "I saw something in your phone." Mia looked at her screen. She was filming again. Reflex, maybe? But there it was in the reflection of Jules' phone, hovering behind them in the darkness, just beyond the glow of the lights, another pale face. Just watching. Still. Patient. They ran. Eventually. A state trooper picked them up walking barefoot near the edge of the highway. He gave them water, a ride back to the main road, and a flat, exhausted look. "You kids been drinking?" They nodded. Didn't matter. The car was towed out the next day. Battery wasn't dead. Nothing wrong with the engine. Started right up. Mia tried to upload the video when they got back to Denton. Every time she did, the app crashed. She tried airdropping it to Cody. His phone locked up. Jules tried screenshotting the face. Her screen went black. When she finally rebooted, every photo in her gallery was gone, replaced with a single black and white image of her sleeping. Someone or something standing over her. They stopped talking to each other not long after that. Mia dropped out of school. Cody moved to Houston. Tasha disappeared, just like her cousin. Never came back after Christmas break. Her parents put up a missing persons flyer, but the photo on it wasn't the one they submitted. It was one of those weird ones, the kind where her face looked too long, the eyes too big, the smile too wide, and the mirror in the corner of the frame showed someone else standing behind her. No one could explain it. No one tried. Sometimes, when you're driving north of Denton on a dark night and the highway's quiet, you might glance in your rear view and catch a glimpse of someone in the back seat. Maybe a face you don't recognize. Maybe a hand on your shoulder, just for a second. Just long enough for them to learn your face. Don't smile, don't turn your back, and whatever you do, don't look too long. They hadn't planned to stop. Melissa had pushed it all the way from El Paso, white lines flickering past like Morse code on the windshield. She told herself she'd make it to Austin in one long shot, but her hands had begun to tremble on the steering wheel somewhere past Junction, and her daughter Ellie, barely 13, was curled up tight in the passenger seat, her headphones clamped over her ears, the cords fraying at the jack. Melissa's neck hurt. Her eyes were dry. The gas light hadn't come on yet, but it was creeping toward empty. That stretch of I-10 between Kerrville and San Antonio was a long, indifferent ribbon. Trees low and thick on either side, scrubby mesquite and oak like gnarled fists punching. The dark. She saw the overpass before she realized there was even a pull-off. Not a proper rest stop, not one with bathrooms or vending machines or bright halogen safety lights, just a concrete shoulder beneath a 2-lane overpass. A sort of utility stop, for truckers probably, or patrol cars. Or lost people. But it was. Flat, and her legs were cramping. So she pulled over. Ellie stirred when the car stopped, blinking behind her glasses. "Why are we stopping?" "Just to stretch," Melissa said, forcing a brightness she didn't feel. "We're almost there. 10 minutes. It was closer to 30. Ellie didn't argue. She slid her headphones down to her neck, opened the door, and stepped out into the heavy summer night. The cicadas were still going, high and droning, and the heat hadn't broken despite the hour. The kind of heat that sticks to your back, crawls under your shirt. Melissa stepped out too, rolled. Her shoulders cracked her neck. The overpass above them loomed like a concrete jaw, teeth made of rusted rebar and blackened pigeon shit. It was darker under there than it should have been. The highway lights didn't quite reach, and no cars passed by. Not for those first. Few minutes. They stood near the car, not daring to go too far. Ellie bent to tie her shoe. Melissa checked her phone. No service. That surprised her. 1 to 10 was supposed to be solid all the way through, but here, tucked under the bridge near Bernie, the signal vanished like spit on asphalt. That's when they heard it. A sound from beneath the bridge. Not a coyote howl, not that high, not that shrill, not that wild. This was different. It had a shape to it. It was lower, like it was being dragged across gravel. Like a man trying to scream while half buried in a ditch. Melissa froze. Ellie looked up, eyes wide, and mouthed, "What was that?" Then it came again, longer this time. It didn't echo. It just hung there in the air, like it didn't come from the ground or sky, just from underneath. Melissa grabbed her daughter's arm. "Get in the car." They both slid in fast, locked the doors. She didn't even start the engine at first, just stared at the spot beneath the overpass where the shadows were too thick, too slow moving, like they had a heartbeat of their own. Then something moved. A shape, tall and hunched, climbed up from below, arms too long, elbows pointing the wrong way. At first, Melissa thought it was a man, maybe a homeless guy or a drifter. But then she saw how it moved like it didn't have joints where it was supposed to. It didn't walk up the embankment. It flowed. Its skin looked like it had been dipped in oil and sand. It didn't shimmer. It just absorbed light. So much so that even the dim moonlight couldn't trace its outline. It stood 7 feet tall, maybe more, and hunched like its neck couldn't bear the weight of its own head. That head was wrong, too long. Not elongated, but stretched, like it had been yanked forward from the back. It had no hair, no clothes, just patches of skin that looked flaked and wet at the same time. And then it looked at them. She didn't see eyes, not exactly, but she felt it watching, like it was counting heartbeats, measuring fear. Ellie whimpered next to her. "Mom, don't move," Melissa whispered. She slid the key into the ignition but didn't turn it yet. The thing raised one hand, long-fingered, curved like it had claws or used to have them. The fingers clicked against each other, a soft TK-TTK-TTTTT, like fingernails on glass. Then it took a step forward. Not toward the road, not toward the trees. Toward them. Melissa turned the key. The car sputtered. Once, twice. The third time, it caught. The headlights flared on, catching the thing in full glow for just a second. And in that second, she saw its face, not a mouth. A hole like it had torn through its own skull from the inside, and teeth that were too many, too human-lined. The edges like barnacles. It had nostrils, but no nose. And no ears. Just pits. Deep, round, pulsing pits on either side of its face. It recoiled at the light. Not like it was scared, more like it was annoyed, like it had been interrupted. Melissa threw the car into reverse and peeled out backward, tires squealing. Gravel. Spat out behind them as she turned, got back onto the main road. She didn't stop. Didn't even slow down. Not when she passed the signs for Bernie. Not when they hit the edge of San Antonio and the streetlights returned. They didn't speak until they reached the safety of a gas station, surrounded by buzzing fluorescent lights and the sour tang of diesel and sugar snacks. "I saw it," Ellie said, barely a whisper. Melissa nodded, hands shaking on the steering wheel. "Me too." They didn't go to Austin that night. They checked into a cheap motel behind a Cracker Barrel, washed their hands 6 times without knowing why. Melissa slept with the lights on. Ellie didn't sleep at all. They didn't talk about it much after. Not until weeks later, when Melissa tried to look up strange sightings off I-10 near Bernie. All she found were whispers. Posts on old forums from 10 years ago. A trucker who'd stopped under the overpass to fix a flat and never made it home. A couple hiking the area who heard crying in a man's voice from under the bridge. A Reddit thread that got deleted within hours titled, "Why doesn't anyone warn you about the thing under the Bernie overpass?" But the story that stuck with her the most was a blog post from 2008 written by a man who claimed to have lived in the area all his life. He said that bridge was built over a place the old people used to call El Silencio del Hombre, the silence of man. Because when you heard the howls, when you saw it, whatever it was, you stopped being a person, stopped being human. You were prey. You were nothing. That howl wasn't a call. It was a warning, a promise. And the last line of that post chilled her more than anything else. It doesn't live there. It waits there. It waits for the ones who hear it. And once you hear it, you always do. She tried to forget that. Sometimes, in the dead of night, when the wind blew through the trees outside their new house, she'd hear something low, gravel-throated, not a coyote, and Ellie would knock on her door and say, "Mom, it's howling again." Farm Road 1960 stretched flat and wide under the heavy Texas sky, running like a dry vein from Humboldt to somewhere less important, dotted with shuttered gas stations and low-slung diners with flickering neon signs. By midnight, the road went. Quiet except for the occasional trucker or the wrong kind of people who like to ride in silence. Reuben had been driving for Lyft about 2 years, mostly nights. He liked the quiet. No traffic. Fewer questions. His car, a black 2015 Camry with a slight rattle in the passenger door, smelled like stale coffee and lemon-scented air freshener, and most nights, that was just fine with him. It was a little past 1 a.m. when he got the ping. A pickup just outside the town of Huffman, damn near the edge of nowhere. He was parked behind a Whataburger, sipping a warm Coke, watching moths beat themselves stupid against the light poles. When he saw the notification, "Pickup, Daniel," he tapped it before he could second-guess himself. The address dropped him in front of an old trailer half swallowed by the dark. No porch light, no signs of life, just brittle grass crackling under his tires and the hum of power lines overhead. He waited. No one came out. He flicked his hazards. leaned over to the passenger seat to adjust his phone's brightness, and then heard the back door open. It didn't startle him, not right away. Folks sometimes slipped in quiet like that, especially this. Far out. He checked the mirror, caught a glimpse of a shape, a figure, slight, maybe a man, maybe a woman, and muttered, "Daniel?" No answer. Ruben didn't press it. He'd had fares who didn't like to talk. People fresh from fights. People running from something. He pulled out onto the road, the car's headlights cutting a pale yellow swath through the dark. He watched the road mostly, but kept checking the rearview mirror. The passenger was hard to make out. Wearing a hood maybe. Head low, but there was something off. The way they sat too straight, like they weren't actually resting against the seat. Like they weren't touching it at all. They passed it closed. Shell station, the sign flickering. Wind rattled a loose panel somewhere on the roof. "You okay back there?" Ruben asked. Silenced. He glanced at his phone. Destination. Unknown. That wasn't normal. Lyft didn't allow rides without a drop-off location anymore. He tapped the screen to see if it glitched, but it only showed the route as a straight line down FM 1960. "Where am I taking you?" He tried again. Nothing. He kept driving. The road stretched ahead, familiar in that way certain Texas roads get at night, repeating the same trees. Same fence posts, same distant shapes that look like barns until you get close and realize they're nothing. Then, as he slowed at a red light near the old Trinity Bridge, a stoplight with no cross traffic, no reason to be red at all, he looked into the mirror and saw it, not one pair of eyes. 2 sets. The passenger had lifted their head, and above their shoulders, above the hood, just behind them, hovering near the roof of the car, was another pair of eyes, glowing, not bright, not movie-style neon, just faint, dull yellow, like light behind stained glass, round, unblinking, and wrong. Ruben turned, heart hammering. The back seat was empty. Completely. No one. He blinked, staring, nothing. He got out, checked the back door, locked. No sign anyone had been there. No smell, no indentation on the cloth seats. Back inside, he checked the app again. The ride had ended. It said it ended 10 minutes ago, but he hadn't stopped. He hadn't even driven 10 minutes yet. His phone buzzed. A new message, no contact name. Just, "Thank you for the ride." "We're almost there." Ruben dropped the phone into the Q folder like it burned. He started driving again. Faster now, headlights throwing twitching shadows across the road. His palms were sweating. He kept darting glances at the mirror. Still empty. Always empty. But he couldn't shake the feeling of something in the car with him. Not in the back seat. Not visible. But near. Inside the skin of the vehicle. Like it had seeped in. At the next intersection, his radio flicked on. Static. It hadn't worked in weeks. Then a voice. Not a broadcast. A whisper. Low, male, maybe. Words he couldn't understand at first, just the tone, coaxing, amused. Then, it grew clearer. "Keep going. You're almost home." He yanked the knob off. Silence again. His phone now refused to load anything. Just showed the same message over and over, though he hadn't opened it. "We're almost there." The road twisted where it shouldn't. He'd taken this stretch of 1960 for years. Drove it every week. Knew where the red barn sat, where the Tebna barbecue place with the broken smoker should have been. None of it was here, just barbed wire and scorched trees. Then, the trees stopped. Ahead, under the black sky, was a house. A 2-story farmhouse, old, gray, sagging under its own weight. Porch. Light swinging in the breeze. Ruben didn't remember turning toward it. The Camry rolled to a stop by itself. Ruben sat stiff behind the wheel. The air smelled like soil, rich, wet soil and old rot. The kind of rot you find under floorboards. He wasn't going to get out, but he did. Feet moved like they didn't belong to him. Gravel crunched underfoot. The porch groaned. The door swung open. Inside, nothing but darkness and the sound of breathing. Not his own. Slow, shallow, rhythmic. He turned to run, but the door shut behind him, the knob gone. Just smooth wood. His phone lit again. You've arrived. The breathing got closer. He backed away, deeper into the house. His feet sank into something soft. Carpet? No, dirt. There was dirt under his shoes. The house was full of it, piled high like it had grown up inside the walls. A shape emerged in the dark. Not a person, a form. Like a man hunched over, crawling on all fours, only its arms bent the wrong way. And those same glowing eyes. The ones from the mirror. It didn't speak. Just moved toward him, slow, like it had all the time in the world. Reuben ran, or thought he did. Next thing he knew, he was in his car again. Morning. Parked behind the same Whataburger, phone dead. Gas tank full. He stumbled out, looked around. Sun was up, sky already hot and pale. He checked his ride history. No rides last night. No record of anyone. Named Daniel. He quit driving for Lyft that week. Moved to Kerrville, took up landscaping. Tried not to think about it. But some nights, when he's up too late, flipping through his old texts, that same message appears. We're almost there. And he never remembers driving. But sometimes he wakes up on a road that feels like 1960, except it's not. They say Highway 6 can play tricks on your mind late at night. It's the stretch of road between Hearn and Houston that gets the least traffic after 11. And even the locals know not to drive it unless they have to. Not because of potholes or wildlife or any of the normal reasons. People just feel uneasy there. The trees lean too close to the shoulder in some places, crowding you like they're listening. The fog rolls in thick and low, especially in spring. But mostly, it's the quiet. That hard, suffocating quiet where your engine feels too loud and even the radio seems out of place. I was coming back from a long haul out of Temple, heading to Alvin to drop off a trailer. It was after 2 in the morning and I'd been on the road close to 10 hours. I figured I'd take 6 down through Bryan to save some time and avoid the main highways. Dumb choice in hindsight. But when you're used to the road, you stop thinking about it. Roads are just roads. Until they aren't. I first saw the lights behind me about 15 miles outside Navasota. They came up fast, real fast for that time of night. I figured it was another semi. The lights were high, spaced wide. I could see the glow filling my mirrors, bouncing into the cab. High beams, too damn close. I clicked mine to dim and hoped he'd do the same. He didn't. I moved to the right a little, letting my wheels nudge the rumble strip, a hint for him to go around. But he stayed right on me, less than a car length behind. Those blinding lights flooding my back window and my mirrors so bad I had to flip the switch to night mode. Even then, I could see them clear. No engine noise though. None. Just my own diesel hum and the distant wind. I thought maybe the guy was tired or drunk, so I slowed down, hoping he'd pass. I dropped from 65 to 55, then 50. Still there. The lights never moved, never bobbed like they would if someone was adjusting or checking their lane. Just locked behind me like they were tied to my bumper. I got nervous, really nervous. I pulled off onto one of those gravel shoulders next to a drainage ditch. As soon as I did, I watched. In the mirror, and the lights slowed too. Not swerved, not hesitated. Just slowed. Perfectly timed, like a shadow. I sat there for a good minute, watching, but the truck didn't pass. It just stayed back, maybe 30 feet behind, lights on full. I couldn't see the cab. Couldn't make out a license plate or markings. The shape was there a semi, definitely, but too clean, too dark. I rolled my window down, leaned out. No sound, no engine. Then the lights flicked off. Not dim, just off, pitch black behind me. And that was somehow worse. I turned my key, threw it in gear, and got back on the highway, tires spitting gravel. No way in hell was I sticking around. About 10 minutes later, just as the highway curved through the edge of a state preserve, the lights were back. No warning, no sound. Just suddenly there again, maybe 10 feet behind, closer than before. I swear, I could feel heat coming through my rear glass. This time I didn't slow. I sped up. I floored it, pushing 70, then 80. The road was empty and straight. I was hoping the next town would have a gas station, maybe a sheriff's deputy parked in a lot somewhere. But nothing came up. Just endless highway and tree line. I glanced at the GPS. It said the next turnoff wasn't for 20 miles. That didn't sit right. I knew this road. I'd driven it 100 times. There should have been a light, a sign, something by now. But it was just blackness and the truck behind me, staying in perfect sync. I started yelling at it, like a madman, telling it to pass, daring it to come closer. I even slammed my brakes once, hoping to spook the driver. The truck mirrored me exactly. I mean exactly. Then I noticed something. There were no other tire marks. I checked the rear view, nothing on the shoulder, nothing on the road. Just my own tracks. I don't remember the swerve. That part is a blur. All I know is my rig was suddenly off the road, tires digging into mud. And weeds, the cab shuddering as I hit the ditch. I must have hit my head on the window, because when I came to, there were red and blue lights flashing. A cop was tapping on the glass and I rolled it down, dazed. "You all right, sir?" I was trying to get away from the truck behind me, I said. He looked confused. "What truck?" I pointed. It was right behind me. Bright lights, no license plate. It followed me for miles. The cop called for backup and started scanning the area with his flashlight. Then he radioed something I couldn't quite hear. Another. Officers showed up and they started searching the road and shoulder. I could tell from their faces they weren't finding anything. One of them finally told me the road showed no signs of another vehicle. No tire marks. No debris. No lights spotted by anyone else. They chalked it up to fatigue. Maybe a hallucination. They said it happens to long haulers more than you'd think. But I know what I saw. And I'm not the only one. I started digging. In trucker forums mostly. One thread caught my eye. A guy out of Victoria posted back in 2013 about a truck with high beams that tailed him from Waller to Hempstead. He tried to stop. Same thing. The truck slowed. Never passed. He ended up calling 911 from a gas station, but by the time the cops came, the lights were gone. Another guy from Freeport said he saw it near Pledger in 2009. He called it the ghost hauler. Said it always shows up between 2 and 4 a.m. Always on Highway 6. What shook me most was the post from a woman named Leanne back in 2001. Her brother died in a crash just south of College Station. Drove off the road into a tree. He called her 10 minutes before, freaking out about a semi riding his ass with high beams on. Said it wouldn't pass no matter what he did. Cops found no other vehicle tracks. They never found the truck. Some say it's just a story. A long haul legend like the Black Dog or Phantom Hitchhiker. Maybe that's true. Maybe my mind cracked a little after too many hours on the road. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But I haven't driven Highway 6 since. And I won't. Because when you see those lights come up behind you, too bright, too close, too steady, you'll feel it. It's not a real truck. It's not driven by anyone. And it never passes. The roads out past the Austin city limits don't get much use anymore. Not since the tollways were built and folks figured out faster ways to cut through the hill country. These backroads, County Road 218, Old Bee Cave Highway, and that stretch near the Dry Creek by Jacob's Bend are mostly used by ranchers, drunk teenagers on weekend airs, or lost tourists who ignore their GPS warnings. And then there's people like me, midlife, recently divorced, trying to reclaim some peace with early morning drives and bad coffee and thermoses that smell faintly like mildew. That's how I ended up seeing him. The boy died. It was late September. One of those mornings when the heat hadn't caught up yet, and the world felt like it was holding its breath. The mesquites were all brittle and dust-colored, and the sky had that pale, endless dome like a ceiling God forgot to paint. I'd taken the long route out past Driftwood, winding down into the shallow gullies and through scrubby, dying farmland. My Silverado bumped along a stretch where the pavement gave out and turned into gravel. That's when I saw him just ahead, riding slowly down the shoulder. A boy, maybe 10 or 11. Rusted bike, too small for his frame. The back tire wobbled with every rotation. He was dressed in an old t-shirt, gray or white. I couldn't tell. It was so caked with road dust, and denim shorts that looked like they hadn't been washed in months. No helmet, just that mop of dark hair flapping in the wind. I slowed down, easing onto the shoulder because something about him just didn't sit right. Out here, you don't leave kids alone on these roads. Coyotes, rattlers, lunatics, you name it. I rolled down the passenger window and leaned over. "Hey, you okay?" He stopped pedaling immediately. Didn't wobble, didn't drift, just stopped. Then he turned to look at me. His face was pale. Not sickly, but like paper left out in the sun too long. His eyes, God help me, were blank. Not empty, not lost, but white. No irises, no pupils. Just bone-white orbs that somehow still focused, still saw. His mouth opened and moved, and I thought maybe my ears were playing tricks. No sound, just lips forming silent words like he was underwater, or I was. He mouthed something, 3 words, maybe 4. I don't know why, but I blinked. Just a natural reaction, like when you try to clear a smudge from your glasses. And he was gone. The road stretched empty. No dust trail, no figure on the horizon. Just mesquite, brittle fence posts, and the buzz of cicadas. I sat there for maybe a full minute, heart hammering. I didn't tell anyone, not right away. Because how do you explain something like that without sounding crazy? You don't. You just let it rot in the back of your head until it either withers or grows teeth. 2 weeks later, I heard about the others. There was this old man who ran a bait shop down by Onion Creek. Said he'd seen a boy on a busted bike pedaling through the mist just before dawn. Said the boy looked like he was mouthing "help me," but when he stopped his truck to look, there was no one there. A couple hiking near Reimer's Ranch swore they saw the same kid. He'd appeared halfway down a dry wash, barefoot, staring at them with blank, luminous eyes. Their dog lost its mind. Wouldn't go near that patch of brush ever again. I didn't want to believe it. You live long enough in Texas, you hear your fair share of ghost stories. Crying women near water. Phantom. Hitchhikers. Burned out headlights signaling the dead. Most of it smoke and loneliness. But this kid, he was different. He showed up again. I was heading home from a job site near Dripping Springs, late again, the kind of late where the light turns that dull, dying amber and everything feels twice as far away. I was coming up on a T-junction when I saw him at the Faithsome at the far end of the field. Still on that same rusted bike, still pedaling slowly, like he had nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. I stopped the truck. Didn't call out this time. Just watched. And sure as hell, he turned to look at me. Same blank face. Same silent mouth. Only this time, I made out the words. He's in the dirt. That's what he mouthed. I'd stake my life on it. He's in the dirt dot and then gone. Not in a flash, not like some camera trick. Just blink, an empty field. I couldn't sleep that night. My dog, Jasper, paced the hallway and barked at the front door, but no one was there. Just wind and gravel and that same sick feeling in my gut. So I did what any idiot would do. I started digging. Not literally, not yet. But I went to the library in town, pulled old microfiche, newspapers from the 80s and 90s, asked around at bars, diners, anywhere with folks old enough to remember things that don't make the papers. And slowly, a shape began to form. There was a boy named Eli Carson. Lived in a trailer off County Road 218 back in '93, 10 years old. Last seen riding his bike down to the creek. Never came home. Cops found the bike a mile from his house, rusted out, bent frame, no sign of a struggle. Folks searched for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing. Eli's father was questioned, of course. He was a drinker, known to get rough with the boy, but no charges ever stuck. Man disappeared a year later. Some say he drove off a bridge in Bastrop County. Others say he was seen squatting in Mexico. No one really cared, but I did. I started. Driving those roads at night, watching, waiting, looking for the boy. He came again. It was raining this time, just a fine mist, but enough to blur the windshield and quiet the world. I was out by Jacob's Bend, where the creek cuts through the limestone and the trees grow too close together. And there he was, standing in the ditch, bike beside him like a rusted corpse. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. And this time, he pointed down. I followed the line of his finger to a patch of earth near an old live oak. It didn't look like much, just gravel, brush, some busted fence wire, but something in me knew. I got out, hands shaking, rain tapping on the brim of my hat. I started to dig. It wasn't hard. The earth was loose, shallow, like it had never really wanted to hold what was put there. Maybe 6 inches down, I found the first bone. By the time the sheriff arrived, I'd uncovered most of a child's skeleton, curled like he'd been shoved in quick. Still wearing scraps of fabric, denim, and cotton, faded by time. DNA confirmed it a week later. Eli Carson. Case closed, papers said. Remains discovered near Jacob's Bend. Missing boy identified. Neatly tied up, but that wasn't the end, because the sightings didn't stop. 3 days after the body was laid to rest, a teenager driving home from a party crashed his car off. FM 1826 said he swerved to avoid a kid on a bike in the middle of the road. No one believed him. Blood tests showed no drugs, no alcohol. Just shock. Then another driver, a hiker, a night jogger. All with the same story. The boy, the bike, the white eyes, the silent mouth. Some say his spirit's trapped, reliving his last ride. Others think it's vengeance, that he's hunting something or someone. Me, I think it's simpler. I think he was lost for too long, forgotten. And now that we've remembered him, now that we've dug him up, something else has taken root in those dry roads and dying trees. Something that remembers every hurt, every lie, every shovel of dirt. Still drive those roads. Can't help it. I keep hoping I'll see him again, even though I know I shouldn't. Hoping maybe this time he'll speak out loud, tell me what he wants, what he needs. But all I ever see is that same pale face, those soundless lips, and those awful, hollow eyes staring back through the glass. And every time, I swear I can feel the ground tremble just a little more, like something buried deeper is waking up. Somewhere around mile marker 143, State Highway 105 stops sounding like Texas, the stretch between Conroe and Cleveland, 32 miles if you're counting runs straight and flat as a stretched nerve. Pines lean in on both sides, thick as army ranks. Some say they've been there since before any road was laid, and they look at tall, grim, immovable. There's a hush between those trees, the kind that makes your ears feel pressurized like you're in a vacuum, like sound is something that's been turned off. Even the bugs stop singing when you hit that middle stretch. The wind dies too. Cars go quiet, even if the engine's running. And if you stop, if you dare stop, they say you'll hear a heartbeat, not yours. Something older, slower dot I grew up hearing about that stretch. Folks called it the hollow. Not because of any hollow in the earth, but because it feels hollow, like something's been scooped out. Or maybe it scoops something out of you when you drive through. Most people don't like talking about it. Those who do always say the same thing. Don't stop. Don't pull over. Keep driving no matter what. But one night, I didn't keep driving. It was early October when it happened. Back in 2008, I was headed east out of Conroe in my 99 Crown Vic, an old sheriff's department hand-me-down I picked up at auction. It still had the cage divider and that little spotlight on the side, though it hadn't worked since I bought it. I was coming back from a job in Waco construction gig and running behind. Thought I'd make it home to Jasper before midnight. Took 105 to shave some time off. Should have stuck to 59. I was about 15 minutes past Conroe when I first noticed the change. At first, I just thought it was late. My windows were cracked, and I realized I couldn't hear the wind anymore. The air wasn't moving, not even a whisper through the trees. Then I noticed I couldn't hear the tires on the pavement either. I turned the radio up static, not just fuzzy, but blank. No hiss, no whine. Just silence. It's hard to explain. That kind of silence unless you've felt it. It gets inside your head. You start to notice your own breathing like it's someone else's. I'd even glanced in the rear view, thinking maybe someone had snuck into the back seat. Nothing there but my cooler and a bag of tools. Then I realized no bugs. No crickets, no cicadas, not even frogs. In East Texas, that's unnatural. Out here, you're never really alone. Something always chirps, clicks, or scuttles, but not here. Not on 105. I should have kept driving. I know that now, but then the car coughed. One little sputter, then nothing. Just dead. My hands clenched the wheel before my brain could catch up, and I coasted to the shoulder. Hazards clicked on, but even they were quiet. I saw the lights flashing in the windshield, but the relay that usually ticked click 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 was mute. I got out, thinking maybe I'd lost the battery. Opened the hood, poked around. Everything looked fine. Nothing leaking, no smoke. That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint at first, like old pennies, metallic. But as I stood there, it got stronger, thicker. Copper and mold, like something wet that had been buried too long. I backed up and scanned the woods. Nothing moved. Not a single branch swayed. Not even the leaves rustled. It was like someone had taken a photo of the forest and taped it around me. I climbed back into the car and tried the ignition. Nothing. Not a click. The dash lights didn't even flicker. That heartbeat at first, I thought it was just me. Nerves. But it didn't match my pulse. It was slower, deeper, like a drumbeat far underground. It echoed through the frame of the car, through the floorboards and the seat and up my spine. I held my breath. It didn't stop, steady, unchanging. I leaned, my ear to the dashboard, and it got louder. That's when I looked out the windshield. There was someone standing in the road. A man. Or what looked like one. He was maybe 100 feet ahead, just past the glare of my headlights. I couldn't make out details. He was just a silhouette, but he wasn't right. Too still. Like a statue. And something about the angle of his arms made my stomach tighten. His elbows hung low, almost touching his knees, and his head was cocked too far to one side. Like his neck had been broken and never set straight. I blinked. He was gone. I stared, heart pounding, sweat pouring from my scalp, ears ringing from that goddamn heartbeat. But the road was empty. I reached for my phone. No signal, not one bar. Tried the emergency dial. Nothing. Not even static. That's when I saw movement in the side mirror, not a person. Not exactly, more like a shape moving between the trees. No sound, no footsteps. Just flickers of motion. Shadows that didn't line up. One of them crossed the road behind me, just at the edge of the taillights. I turned to look, nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, it was closer. I locked the doors. Old habit. Like a lock could stop whatever the hell that was. Then I saw the man again. This time, he was at the driver's side window. I didn't hear him walk up. Didn't hear anything at all. Just looked left and there he was. Face 6 inches from the glass. No expression. Skin like damp concrete. His eyes were wrong. Not glowing, not red. Just too many. Rows of tiny black eyes clustered in the sockets. Like a spider. He tilted his head again, way too far, then placed his hand on the glass. The window hummed under his touch. That's the best word I've got. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. More like a vibration I felt in my teeth. The heartbeat got louder. I screamed, slammed the car into neutral, turned the key again, and somehow, by nothing but God's mercy, the engine roared back to life. The man vanished. I didn't wait. Slammed it into drive and floored it. Tires screamed, finally, sound. And I shot down 105 like the devil was chasing me. Which, to this day, I believe he was. No shadows followed. No more figures in the trees. But I didn't slow down until I hit the outskirts of Cleveland and the sounds of the world came rushing back. Crickets, cicadas, the wind, even the muffled music of a roadside bar. I pulled over in a jack-in-the-box parking lot and cried until my hands stopped shaking. I tried telling someone once. My brother, a deputy out in Livingston. He just stared at me, pale as milk, and said, "You stopped, didn't you?" I nodded. He didn't say another word, just turned and walked away. That was 16 years ago. I haven't driven 105 since that, but every now and then I hear about someone who breaks down out there. Someone who stops. I don't ask questions. I don't want to know what they saw, but I'll tell you this much. If you're ever heading east, out of Conroe and your radio goes quiet, if the bugs stop singing and the wind drops dead, keep driving. Grip the wheel, stare straight ahead, and whatever you do, don't stop the car, because if you do, you'll hear it too. That's slow, patient. Heartbeat, and it's not yours. He had driven that stretch of Beltway 100 times, maybe more. Ever since he took a contracting job that required him to commute from Katy into the eastern edge of Houston, Clay Foster had grown intimate with the tangle of tollways, feeder, roads, and construction zones that passed for highways in that sprawling, humid city. Beltway 8, especially near the ship channel, always gave him the creeps, even in daylight. Something about the overpasses and interchanges towering like rusted skeletons above sluggish traffic, the perpetual film of grime on the concrete barriers, and the haze that never quite lifted. But that night, it felt worse. Like the road was pressing in around him. Like something was watching. It was almost 11 p.m. when Clay left a site inspection east of Pasadena. He was tired, bone deep, the kind of tired that made his hands feel numb around the steering wheel. The air outside was heavy and warm even at night, and the inside of his truck had the dry, recycled chill of overworked AC. The road was nearly empty, just a few trucks and the occasional sedan ghosting past with the flat, disconnected speed of late-night traffic. Clay's headlights stretched far into the dark lanes ahead, but they seemed dimmer than usual, like they couldn't quite cut through the night dot. It was when he passed the I-45 interchange that he noticed the sedan. It was black, or maybe dark. Gray, it was hard to tell under the hazy orange glow of the freeway lights. He hadn't seen it merge onto the beltway. 1 second, the lane beside him was empty. The next, the sedan was there, keeping exact pace with him. Not tailgating, not passing, just staying level with his driver's side door. He figured it was just a lazy driver or someone zoning out like he was, so he tapped the gas a little. The truck's V8 rumbled and he surged ahead by a few car lengths. Sedan kept up. Clay frowned. He eased off the pedal, let himself slow back to the speed limit. The sedan slowed too. Still right there, just over his left shoulder. He turned his head, half expecting to meet the eyes of some dumb teenager pulling a prank, or maybe some road-raging commuter. But what he saw froze his guts. The sedan's windows were black. Not tinted pitch black. Opaque, like someone had painted over them from the inside. No reflection, no glint, just darkness. 4 doors, no markings. No lights inside. The car didn't even seem to hum. Just glided, silent and shadowy, inches from his truck. A low, uneasy chill rolled down Clay's spine. He swallowed hard and told himself not to panic. It was probably just some weird vinyl wrap or something. Maybe the driver worked for a security firm. He'd seen cars like that, unmarked, tinted to hell, following people around downtown. Glanced back at the road. His lane was clear. No cars behind him for a while. He signaled right and moved into the next lane over. The sedan drifted smoothly with him. Still no turn signal. Still no sound. Now his chest was tight. He hit the gas again. This time, harder. Took the needle up to 85. The road ahead was empty, long and flat between overpasses. His tires hummed, wind whipping against the windows. He watched the sedan drop behind him in the mirror, just for a second. Relief. Then he saw it speed up. No engine sound. No tire squeal. Just that black shape sliding forward, effortlessly, as if dragged by some invisible tether. It kept pace. Then it matched his speed again. Cruising, calm. Like it had all the time in the world. His hands were slick with sweat now. Something in his chest fluttered. He tried not to look, but he couldn't help himself. He turned his head again. Still. Black windows. All of them. But now, something moved. The interior of the sedan had been dark before, just a shadow behind the glass. But now it was alive with motion. Something inside was writhing. Not one shape, many. Figures. Clay couldn't make out details, just limbs. Or what looked like limbs, shifting and twitching like snakes in a sack. One figure pressed against the rear window, just behind the driver's seat. It wasn't a face exactly, but a pale, moist blur. Then something like a hand or a claw tapped against the inside of the glass. He gasped, jerking the wheel slightly, nearly clipping the rumble strip. He caught himself and straightened the truck. His heart thudded against his ribs, loud in. His ears. Then came the headlights, not his. From behind, a semi had rounded a bend in the distance behind them, its brights on. For a few brief seconds, its lights washed over the sedan, illuminating it fully for the first time. And he saw them. Inside the car, dozens of them, packed into the vehicle like bodies in a morgue drawer. Pale, hairless, eyes that were too wide, mouths slack, gaping. Their skin sagged like wet leather, and they were piled into the seats and floorboards like they had melted into one another. Some of them were moving, not crawling, not struggling, just shifting slow and nauseous, like meat floating in a jar of brine. One sat in the driver's seat. It had no face, just a stretched, wet expanse of skin where its features should have been. but it was watching him. He knew it. Somehow, it was watching him. Then the sedan's headlights went off. No fading. No flickering. Just gone. And in the blink of an eye, the car was no longer beside him. Clay looked around wildly. No lights in the mirror. No shape behind him. Nothing in the blind spots. The beltway was empty. Just the distant truck behind him, still lumbering along. He pulled over onto the shoulder just past the Wallaceville exit and sat with the engine. Idling, hands shaking, breathing in staccato gulps. He rubbed his eyes, trying to convince himself it was fatigue. Maybe he'd nodded off. Maybe it was some twisted dream, hallucination, something. But the feeling in his chest, that cold, crawling sense of being seen, didn't fade. He stayed on the shoulder for 10 minutes, then pulled back onto the road and took the long way home. Through side streets, avoiding the beltway completely. The next morning, he went to the auto shop and had his truck's mirrors realigned and checked the dashcam footage. Though he didn't remember the dashcam light being on, the SD card was empty. No footage from that night. Just black. He tried not to think about it. Didn't talk to anyone. But he found himself avoiding that part of town. He started taking 610, even if it added 20 minutes. It was worth it to keep from seeing that black sedan again, but 3 weeks later, he saw it again. This time, parked at the far end of the grocery store lot. No one around it. Just sitting there, in the summer heat, all windows dark. Still. Silent. When he blinked, it was gone. He's seen it 4 more times since. Always just on the edge of somewhere. Watching. Waiting. He doesn't drive at night anymore. He quit the contracting job. Moved north to Dallas, trying to put distance between him and that stretch of Beltway 8. But some nights, when the wind's just right and the streets are quiet, he swears he can hear tires on pavement just behind him. A soft engine hum. A low tapping on the inside of glass. And every time he looks in the mirror, part of him expects to see a car full of shadows keeping pace, just waiting for him to look. We took the back roads that night, chasing a dare wrapped in cheap beer and bravado. It started at the Valero in Shepherd, San Jacinto County, around 10:45. Clay had just topped off his shitty silver Civic, the one with the peeling bumper stickers, and the suspension that creaked like a rusted porch swing. There were 5 of us crammed in. Clay driving, Vanessa riding shotgun, me, Marcus, and Jenny wedged into the back like mismatched cargo. It was hot, even for late October, and the windows kept fogging from the mix of breath and nervous energy. Dare came from some Reddit thread Jenny found called Roads You Shouldn't Take. It sounded like one of those internet things designed to spook stoned teenagers. Drive down Old Butcher's Road in San Jacinto County. Park your car on the bridge just past mile marker 7. Turn off your engine. Wait 5 minutes. The ghosts of children will leave handprints on your car. They'll try to push it uphill. We laughed, of course, ridiculous, urban legend crap. But Marcus bet Clay $20 he wouldn't do it, and Clay, being Clay, wasn't going to back down. So we turned off the highway and headed into the woods, our phones blinking out one by one as the signal died behind us. Old Butcher's Road wasn't on any of our GPS apps. We found it marked by a sun-bleached wooden sign half swallowed by kudzu, with letters barely legible in the Civic's weak high beams. The road itself was narrow and cracked, hemmed in by pine and swamp oak. The ditches on either side ran deep, full of stagnant water and mosquito larvae. It was the kind of road that felt forgotten, like it hadn't been used in years, yet somehow still knew you were there. The bridge wasn't much, just a concrete slab over a slow-moving creek, more culvert than crossing. We stopped the car dead. Center, headlights slicing into the trees ahead. Clay cut the engine, and suddenly the night closed in. No more radio, no more idle hum. Just crickets, wind, and the tick of the cooling engine. We sat in silence for a while. No one said the 5 minutes had started, but we all felt it. The stillness. The wait. Vanessa lit a cigarette, her lighter flaring in the dark like a match. In a cave, Jenny tapped her nails against the window, rhythmic and tense. I kept watching the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something come crawling out of the woods dot around minute 4. The car shifted. Not much, just a soft jolt like someone had leaned against it from behind. Clay spun in his seat, wide-eyed. Did y'all feel that? We nodded. A second bump. The kind that lifted the rear suspension a hair, then dropped it. Then, tiny thumps, rapid, all at once. Like fingers pattering on the trunk, the roof, the hood, hundreds of them. It was like rain, except there were no clouds, no water, no sound but the contact. Tap, tap, tap. Light but insistent. Jenny screamed. Not loud, just a sharp intake, a panicked gasp. Clay cranked the key, and the Civic stuttered to life like it had been underwater. We peeled out, tires skidding on loose gravel, kicking up dust and swamp stink. Nobody spoke on the way back to Shepherd. Not a damn word. But when we pulled into the parking lot of the car wash next to the diner, the headlights hit the hood, and that's when we saw them. Handprints. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All child-sized. Some were clear, perfect, every ridge, every tiny palm, line. Others were smudged like the hands had been greasy or wet. They covered the hood, the windshield, the side panels. One print looked like it had been dragged across the passenger window as if a kid had been pulled away while reaching. And there were no kids. Not on that road. Not for miles. Vanessa started crying. Clay just stared, hands clenched on the wheel. Knuckles white. Get the hose, he muttered and pulled into the wash bay. We scrubbed that car for 2 hours. Soap, high-pressure rinse, those weird foam brushes that always smell faintly like mildew. The prints stayed. They faded slightly when wet, but the second the car dried, they reappeared stark against the silver paint like ghost grease. We left it overnight. Next morning, still there. Clay took it to a detailer in Livingston. The guy ran his fingers over one of the prints and said, "You got kids?" Clay shook his head. The guy backed away and refused to touch the car. Told him to get that thing out of here. Day 2, the Civic sat in Clay's driveway while the rest of us came and went in different cars. Nobody wanted to ride in it. Clay parked it in the shade, under a tarp. Still didn't help. The prints bled through the dust cover like sweat stains. On day 3, they vanished. Just gone. No trace. Clay even poured water on the hood to check the way it beaded. Nothing. It was like they'd never been there at all. That should have been the end of it. But a WSN T. Marcus was the first to start seeing them. Said he'd wake up in the middle of the night to soft tapping on his bedroom window, second story, no ledge. Then Jenny swore she saw a small handprint on her bathroom mirror one morning right after a shower. She lived alone. No nieces, no nephews. Nothing that could explain it. Then it got worse. Vanessa crashed her car on FM 2666, just outside of Point Blank. No one knows what caused it. She'd been driving home from work at dusk. Swerved hard enough to flip her car into a drainage ditch. When the firemen pulled her out, she was unconscious. But the inside of her windshield had a single, perfect handprint on it right above the steering wheel. Not hers. Clay. Well, Clay disappeared. That was a month after the bridge. He stopped. Answering texts, didn't show up to work. His house was locked, car still in the driveway. The Civic still spotless. No prints. Cops got involved, checked the place. Found his phone on the kitchen table, half-eaten bowl of cereal in the sink. Back door was wide open. No sign of struggle, but muddy footprints, small, barefoot led from the backyard to the porch and then just Stop. They never found him. Stillhaven single quotes T. Sometimes I dream about that road. Not the bridge itself, but the woods around it. The darkness beneath the trees. I hear the tapping in my sleep, now on the windows, the walls, even the headboard of my bed. Always that same rhythm, light, playful, like fingers drumming. I haven't gone back. I won't, but sometimes I check the hood of my car after a long drive, especially if I've been anywhere near San Jacinto County. I wipe it with my sleeve, breathing hard, waiting to see if anything appears, because I know they're still out there, waiting. And the scariest part? They want to be touched. They always said the highways west of Odessa weren't just lonely, they were wrong. It wasn't the kind of wrong you could point to on a map or in a mechanic's report. It was a feeling like the land itself didn't want you there past a certain hour. Flat, sun-blasted during the day and open to all the bitter voices of the wind at night, the oil fields stretching out past Highway 302 didn't offer comfort. They offered work mostly, and the kind of labor that stripped your back and soul bare. And if you listened too long, too close to the hum of the pump jacks in the distance, you'd start to think they were speaking a language not meant for you. Roy Mercer had been driving hauls out there for nearly 15 years. Just him, his rig, and 1,000 miles of blacktop looping through the Permian Basin. He was a no-nonsense type, the kind of guy who kept a crucifix tucked behind the visor even though he hadn't been to church in over a decade. Not superstitious. Not really. But he'd heard enough strange chatter on the CB at 3 a.m. to respect the oddities of the road. Truckers talked. They saw things. Hell, sometimes they felt them more than they saw. But Roy never put much weight into it. Not until that night in July. Not until he saw the oil field man with no eyes. He just picked up a load out of Pecos, heading east through Natries and back toward Odessa. The sun had dipped behind the flat horizon, bleeding orange across the Kia desert before leaving nothing but the purple bruise of twilight. It was just past 10, the kind of hour where the radio loses all decent reception and your only companion is the groan of the tires and the occasional flicker of an oil flare in the distance. Roy had taken this stretch 100 times. He knew. Every bend, every busted mile marker, every place where the road sloped just wrong and made your suspension groan like something was crawling under the cab. This part of the drive, where 302 narrowed before it met the 385 junction, was always a little eerie. The brush grew high on either side, hiding God knows what, and the air seemed stiller, thicker. You could feel the temperature drop even in July. Roy kept one hand on the wheel, the other nursing a lukewarm coffee when he saw the figure dotted. Was just ahead, maybe 40 yards out, walking along the median. That wasn't so strange in itself. You'd see the occasional drifter or oil field hand hoofing it if their truck broke down or they were hitching a ride between sites. But what caught Roy's attention was how the guy walked real slow, real deliberate, like he wasn't in a hurry, like the night and the heat and the endless Texas dark didn't mean a thing to him. The man wore a pair of blue coveralls, stained and sagging. Roy recognized the type oil field issue, the kind you got from a supply shack out near Monahan's. There was something about the way the man carried himself, arms stiff at his sides, boots barely lifting, that made Roy feel a pang of unease tighten under his ribs. He slowed instinctively. Just a bit. Enough to get a better look. And then the man turned his head, not fast. Just a gradual swivel, like his neck creaked on rusty hinges. Roy squinted, headlights washing over the man's face. And that's when he saw no eyes, no lids, no lashes, just two black gaping holes where eyes should have been, not empty like sockets. These were deeper, darker, like staring down the barrel of a well with no bottom. There was no shine, no wetness, just a matte black that swallowed light whole. Roy's chest seized. He blinked. Just a reflex. But in the split second that his eyes shut and opened again, the man was gone. Not walking away. Not turned around. Just gone. There was nothing on the median, but dirt and gravel and scrub. Roy slammed his foot on the brake and jerked the wheel a bit, tires squealing as the truck swerved onto the shoulder. His breath came shallow, fast. He leaned over, peering into the side mirror, then the rear view, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. Nothing. No one. Only the sound of his own engine and the high, warbling hum of the desert wind. And then he smelled it. Crude oil. Thick, bitter, almost metallic. Not the kind of faint scent you got passing a pump jack. This was in the cab, saturated. He reached for the vent, thinking maybe something had backfired, but the smell didn't lessen. It seemed to crawl along his skin, nestle into his clothes. Rolled down the window, gagging, but the hot night air only seemed to stir it more. He checked under the seat, the floor mat, even the back of his neck to see if he'd gotten some on him somehow. Nothing. The cab was clean, but the smell wouldn't leave. It lingered. All night. Every mile back to Odessa, even when he pulled. Into the truck stop near the loop and stepped outside, the scent clung to him like a curse. He barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that face, those holes where a man's soul should have been. They weren't just empty. They were hungry. And they'd looked right at him. The next morning, he went to the wash bay and had the cab scrubbed top to bottom. Didn't help. A guy named Jesse who worked the pressure hose took one sniff and said, "Damn, smells like y'all hit a spill site." Roy didn't argue. He just nodded, paid extra, and took his truck back to the yard. For the next few days, everything was. Off radios in the cab would cut in and out, even with brand new batteries. His GPS spun him in circles, trying to reroute him into parts of the desert that didn't exist. His dreams turned black and thick, like trying to swim through tar, and the smell. God help him, the smell. No matter how many air fresheners he clipped to the vent, how many times he washed, it came back. Especially at night. Then he started. Seeing the man again, not on the highway this time. In the mirrors, rear view, side, even the polished chrome of the tanker. Just a flicker. A shape standing still, coverall stained, head turned, staring with those void black pits. Gone again the moment Roy tried to focus. He tried to talk about it once. With a fellow driver over coffee out at a diner on Andrews Highway. Just hinted, just barely, that maybe he'd seen something strange out there. The guy Sam just nodded and said, "Out past 302, right? Median?" Roy blinked. Yeah. Sam didn't say anything for a long time. Then he took a deep drag of his cigarette and said, "My cousin saw him too. About 5 years back. Wrecked his Peterbilt into a culvert trying to avoid the bastard. Told me before he went under the knife that the man didn't just look at him. He spoke. Said something about the bones in the oil. Roy didn't ask what. That meant he didn't want to know. He just went home, locked his doors, and didn't take another haul for almost 2 weeks. But work doesn't stop. Not out there. The oil field calls, and men like Roy answer, no matter what's waiting on the highway. A few months later, late October, another driver vanished along that same stretch. A guy named Leland who worked nights. They found his truck idling on the shoulder, driver's door open, cab empty. No signs of a struggle, no blood. Just the faint smell of crude hanging in the air, and 2 dark smears on the passenger side window looked like handprints. They never found Leland. Never found his phone, his keys, his boots. Only the truck, the smell, and silence. Some say the oil field man is a ghost. Others say he's a warning. Something left behind when men drilled too deep into a part of Texas not meant to be disturbed. A place where the bones in the ground still whisper, still weep, still hunger. Roy doesn't care what he is. He just knows this. Out there, past Odessa, after dark, when the wind dies and the pumps stop and the stars blink out like dead eyes, you don't stop on the median, not for a hitchhiker, not for a flat tire, not for anything. Because if you do and if he's there, you'll smell him before you see him. And once you see him, it's already too late. The first reports started trickling in during the spring of 2023, buried deep in local Reddit threads and whispered through CB radio chatter. Drivers headed south on I-35 near Waco were getting rerouted by their GPS apps Google Maps, Waze. Even Apple Maps down a narrow gravel road marked only by a weather-worn sign reading, County Road 3341. Most of them were trying to avoid the eternal tangle of construction and semis near downtown Waco. The rerouting seemed innocent enough. A detour to save 15 minutes. But something was wrong with that road. Something off. The first man who vanished was a 41-year-old insurance adjuster named Derek Manley, driving down from Dallas to Austin for a company training. According to his wife, he texted her on 3:17 p.m. on May 9, 2022, "GPS took me on some weird back road, but I think I'm still on track. Be there soon." That was the last anyone heard from him. State troopers found his last ping southeast of Lorena, near a stretch of farmland long since given over to mesquite scrub and cow pastures. The gravel road in question was barely wide, enough for 2 pickups to pass, and it twisted through land where the fence lines had long rotted away. No houses, no barns, no landmarks, just trees, heat, and dust. The road ends in a shallow bowl of tall weeds and cedar brush where a warped wooden sign stands nailed to a post. It reads in big black letters, "Nitrogen monoxide return." Locals swear that sign wasn't there before. They say the road didn't even used to exist. Over the next year, more people came forward with eerily similar stories. They'd be driving near Waco, usually mid-afternoon, and suddenly their GPS would say, "Faster route found. Save 14 minutes." They'd glance at the screen, accept the reroute, and turn off the highway. The gravel road would start narrow and well-graded, but soon the trees would press in, the signal would drop, and the road would start to feel wrong. Not just rural wrong. The dust got thicker, the sky dimmer, like something was off with the sun. Birds stopped singing. One woman swore she saw someone standing off in the trees, facing away from the road. Another said the same thing but claimed the figure was facing toward her, mouth open too wide, eyes like holes burned through paper. Most people had the sense to turn around before they reached the end. Not all of them made it back unscathed. One couple from Temple said their cars stalled just as they were trying to reverse out. They said they heard something scraping along the passenger side, even though nothing was visible outside the window. Later, they found long gouges in the paint-thin, parallel, like fingernail marks. They sold the car a week later, but Derek Manley was the only one who vanished completely. No body, no car, not even a shoe print. The local sheriff's office did a search, dogs, helicopters, the works. Nothing. It was like the road swallowed him whole. I started digging into it late last year, purely out of curiosity. I'm a long-haul trucker and always thought I had a feel for weird stuff on the road. Things you don't talk about at truck stops, things you don't put in the logbooks. I found a couple of people on Facebook who said they'd been rerouted to the same place, only they swore it wasn't just the GPS. One woman, a hospice nurse from Robinson, told me she'd heard a voice coming from her phone speaker even after she lost signal. Not robotic, she said, more like someone trying to sound like a GPS, but wrong. like they didn't know how people actually talk. She said it told her to keep going even after the map had frozen. She turned around when her radio cut out and she smelled something sweet and metallic, like syrup mixed with blood. I drove out there myself this past February on a Sunday afternoon. Took a rental truck, brought a CB and a backup satellite phone just in case. The road wasn't on any official map, but I found the turnoff just south of Golinda. Gravel was loose like it hadn't been packed down in years. Trees leaned in overhead like they were trying to keep secrets. About 2 miles in, all signal dropped, phone, satellite, everything. My truck's dash cam froze and rebooted itself. The CB started crackling with static, then something that sounded like whispering. I don't spook easy, but I'll tell you right now, I got out. Backed up slow, took a video on the way out, though it later showed nothing but static past the 1 mile mark. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Before I turned around, I saw the sign at the end. The same one others mentioned. No return. Except this time, there was something new scratched beneath it. Fresh, shallow gouges. In the wood, barely legible. It said, "He stayed." I showed the footage to a friend of mine who works tech support for one of the big GPS companies. He ran the raw data through several filters and found something weird. At the exact moment my truck passed a certain GPS coordinate, there was a sudden, massive burst of non-visual noise, almost like a corrupt audio file hidden inside a still image. It lasted 0.4 seconds and was completely silent to the human ear. But when he slowed it down and enhanced it, it sounded like a man saying, "Where do you think you're going?" There's a theory, passed around in the darker corners of the web, that the road isn't real. Or at least not always real. That it appears only under certain conditions, when traffic's bad, when a driver's distracted, when they're just tired enough to accept a shortcut without thinking. Some say it's a kind of trap, a glitch in reality. Others say it's something older, a boundary, a thin place where the fabric between worlds wears down. In early June, I got an email from someone claiming to be Derek Manley's cousin. Said he got a postcard in the mail, no return address. Just a photo of that same gravel road with the nitrogen monoxide return sign visible in the distance. On the back, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Still here." I didn't believe him, figured it was a hoax until he sent me a scan. I matched the handwriting to a birthday card Derek had sent his nephew in 2019. Identical. Don't know what's at the end of that road. I don't want to. But I'll tell you this. If your GPS ever offers a shortcut near Waco and the road looks too narrow, too empty, too quiet, turn around. Don't wait for the sign. Don't let the signal drop. Don't listen if the voice on the GPS changes, or if it starts calling you by name, because the ones who go all the way down, they don't come back. And sometimes, if you stand real still, in the dead weeds near that final bend, you can hear something moving just past the tree line. Not animals. Not wind. Something waiting. They say it started sometime back in the 60s, when the city still bled into farmland and the smell of cattle and cedar smoke was stronger than the gas fumes from the highway. There was a bridge west of Fort Worth, half-rotted, tucked behind. Thicket of oak and mesquite, where kids would go to drink warm beer and scare each other with stories about the goatman. Folks whispered that if you honked your horn 3 times at midnight, just once, just 3 sharp blasts into the dark, something would answer. A figure with long limbs, hooves instead of feet, and horns that curved backward like a ram's. Red eyes that burned through the trees. It wasn't a joke to the locals, not really. But enough time passed and people got braver or dumber. The Goatman Bridge, as it was called, ran over a dry creek bed that hadn't seen water since the drought of '88. It was splintered and cracked. the concrete slabs uneven and littered with the bones of deer and raccoons. People said the county meant to tear it down years ago, but for some reason they never did. The paperwork always got lost. I didn't believe in it, not really. My name's Mason Delaney. I'm 20 now, but this happened when I was 17, just before graduation. My buddy Connor Reeves was the one who brought it up again. We were sitting on the hood of his Camaro in the Whataburger parking lot, buzzing off cokes and the leftover adrenaline from a high school party that fizzled out early. The night was humid, heavy, the kind of dark that sticks to your skin like oil. You ever heard about that Goatman shit? He asked, eyes flicking toward the road like he already had a plan. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, every kid in Fort Worth's heard about it. Just some crackhead in a Halloween mask who scared the wrong church group. But Connor had that look. The same look he got right before he lit fireworks in the school gym or jumped the ditch behind his daddy's barn on a dirt bike. Reckless, stupid, but magnetic. You couldn't say no to him. Not really. Let's do it, he said. Just for fun. We'll honk, take a video, get some views, maybe make a TikTok. Could go viral. I should have said no. I should have told him that legends stick around for a reason. But instead, I laughed. And I got in the car. It was past midnight by the time we found the turnoff. The bridge wasn't marked. No signs, no guardrails. Just a narrow dirt road that dipped into shadow and twisted through a corridor of gnarled trees. The kind of place where cell signal dies and sound doesn't carry. The Camaro's headlights bounced off, the branches like they were reaching for us. The bridge appeared out of the dark like a bad memory, broken, half sunk, with rusted rebar poking out like bones. We rolled onto it slow, the tires crunching over gravel and something that sounded like dry leaves but felt thicker, slicker. Connor killed the engine and flicked off the lights. We sat there in the dark, windows down, listening to the night breathe. Crickets, frogs, wind through branches. The usual. You ready? He asked, already grinning. Don't be an idiot, I muttered. But he hit the horn anyway. 3 times. Sharp. Quick. The sound echoed off the trees like it was bouncing around inside a cave. Then silence. We waited. A minute passed. 2. Guess. The Goatman's asleep, I joked, but my voice came out thinner than I liked. Connor shrugged. He reached for the ignition. Lame as hell. That's when we heard it. Not a howl, not a growl, just a scrape. Like something heavy dragging across asphalt. Slow, deliberate. Somewhere behind us. Connor froze. His hand hovered over the key. We didn't turn around. Not right away. The scrape came again. Closer now. Then the soft thump of hooves on gravel. Connor. I said low. He turned the key. The engine stuttered once. Then again, dead. Oh no, he breathed. I turned around in my seat, just enough to look through the back window. Nothing at first, just darkness. But then the taillights caught something moving. A shape, tall, broad, almost human but not. Its legs bent wrong, like a deer mid-fall. The eyes weren't glowing red like the stories said. They were worse. They were reflecting the red from the taillights. Bright, sharp, and aware. The thing took another step forward. A horn scraped the roof of the car, slow and deliberate, like it was tracing our outline. Then Connor screamed. The engine roared to life, and we peeled out so fast the tires kicked up chunks of concrete. I didn't look back, not once. Not even when I heard the metal creak and snap like something was chasing us down the road. Less than a mile later, we hit something. The car jerked sideways, slammed into a tree, and everything went black. I came to with the smell of gasoline in my nose and Connor moaning beside me, blood running down his face from a gash near his eye. The windshield was shattered. The airbags had deployed, but that wasn't what made me scream. It was the hood. The paint had bubbled, scorched like it had been set on fire. And in the center, clear as day, was a mark, a hoof print, burned into the metal like a brand. We didn't say anything. Not on the ride home, not to the cops, not even to our parents. They blamed the deer for the crash. Said we'd been speeding, probably drinking. But I saw the footage from Connor's dash cam before he deleted it. There was no deer, no animal. Just a shape, half hidden in the trees, watching, waiting. Connor stopped coming to school after that. Said he was having nightmares. Said the thing followed him home. I thought he was just shaken up, until I started hearing it too. At night, hooves on the gravel outside my window, scraping along the walls. Once I found a chunk of horn on my front porch, curved, yellowed, and warm to the touch. I tried to move on, but the legend doesn't let you go once it's got your name last. I heard Connor was admitted to some facility near Amarillo. He carved symbols into his arms, kept muttering about red eyes and fire and something coming through the trees. His parents don't talk about it. Mine pretend it never happened. But I know what I saw. And I know the mark never faded from that hood. The scrapyard said it was the damnedest thing, like it was scorched into the metal, deeper than any fire could reach. So if you're ever out near Lake Worth and you find yourself on a back road, with no signal and a bridge that feels older than time, don't stop. And for God's sake, don't honk.